Chapter 36:12. The Central Continent's cultivation world was in turmoil. Following the extermination of the Pang clan by the East Continent's Protoss army led by Kang Q, the entire Central Continent's cultivation world was completely shattered. The fact that a fellow from the East Continent defeated the local tyrant, the Pang clan, was unbelievable to the Central Continent's forces. After all, such a thing had never happened before. The East Continent had never had such a person or clan that could kill their way out of the East Continent and defeat the Central Continent's superforces. The moment the East Continent's Protoss army led by Kang Q defeated the Pang clan, countless East Continent's cultivators felt exhilarated. However, although they defeated the Pang clan and became the overlord of the Central Continent, they did not dare to relax because the entire Central Continent was still in turmoil. Not all the forces in the Central Continent were willing to side with Kang Q. Some of the forces that were loyal to the Pang clan formed an alliance or went into hiding, hoping to deal a heavy blow to the East Continent's Protoss army led by Kang Q. Kang Q immediately sent countless experts to wipe out the cultivation forces in the cultivation world of Zhengzhou State that were loyal to the Pang clan. Battles continued to break out in the Central Continent from time to time. Naturally, Kang Q would not mobilize the East Continent's Protoss army to wipe out the loyal forces of the Pang clan. Because the Central Continent's forces that sided with Kang Q occupied the majority of the Central Continent's cultivation world, these forces took action to help him wipe out the stubborn resistance. The Shiman clan's army was also on the move because they wanted to take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to expand their territory. The Shiman clan wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to rise and become a first-rate clan at the very least. Therefore, the Central Continent's cultivators could often see countless cultivators with huge swords flying high in the sky. Following that, a certain force in the cultivation world was uprooted. The Shiman clan's sword principle killing formation was terrifyingly powerful. Even the first-rate forces in the Central Continent could not withstand the sword principle killing formation formed by countless swordsmen. The other forces that sided with Kang Q also fought desperately for Kang Q, wiping out the loyal forces of the Pang clan. As long as the place was conquered by these forces, it would be ruled and controlled by them. Kang Q would not interfere. In this way, the loyal forces of the Pang clan were out of luck. Under the frenzied attacks of the major forces, these loyal forces were quickly annihilated. Of course, there were also some loyal forces of the Pang clan that had gone into hiding. The Central Continent was extremely vast. Once these guys went into hiding, it would not be easy to find them. No matter what, it was impossible for the Pang clan to turn the tables. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. The Earth Spirit tribe, the Celestial God tribe, and the mysterious Snake tribe were all prepared. The Earth Spirit clan's Celestial race's army was the strongest among the 3 races. When the Earth Spirit clan's army of 100,000 fought against the Pang clan, they lost nearly 10,000 soldiers. Almost all of the soldiers under the 3rd Ancestor's command were annihilated. The 1st, 2nd, and 4th Earth Spirit Ancestor didn't lose too many soldiers. A strong killing aura burst out from the battle formation, causing even the sky to lose its color. In the evening, the soldiers of the major clans of the East Continent gathered. For a moment, there were groups of soldiers flying in the sky everywhere in the Pang clan's ancestral land. This time, Kang Q wanted to end the battle quickly and drive those bastards from the South Continent out of the Central Continent in one go. If the other party refused to leave, there would be no other way. All of them would have to stay. The forces that had defected were also prepared. The Shiman clan's sword principal army was also assembled. They only needed to wait for Kang Q's order to immediately use the transportation formation platform and kill their way out of Nantian City. Kang Q had already ordered people to set up the coordinates outside Nantian City. In the Pang clan's ancestral land, countless battle formations floated in the sky. Battle beasts roared and flags fluttered. The killing aura filled every inch of the void between heaven and earth. At this time, a dozen powerful figures walked out from the depths of the Pang clan's ancestral land. The person in the lead was Kang Q, and the dozen people behind him were all Overlord-level existences. For example, Nai Jingyun, the Sword Slave, the Demon God, the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit, the second ancestor of the Earth Spirit, and so on. These existences were either peerless experts or clan leaders. As soon as these people appeared, the noise immediately disappeared. The aura that erupted from this group of people deterred the violent battle beasts. Kang Q and the others arrived in front of the battle formations of the major clans. He did not say anything to boost morale, but directly activated a transportation formation platform. Buzz! The void vibrated, and countless formation patterns emerged in the sky above all the battle formations, forming a super transportation formation. In the next moment, a ball of divine light emerged from the super teleportation formation. The ball of divine light enveloped all the battle formations below. Swoosh! The moment all the battle formations were shrouded by the divine light, they all disappeared in the void. Kang Q and the others also soared into the sky and disappeared in the void. At this time, the area where Nantien City was located was abnormally calm. In Nantien City, Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan personally guarded the City Lord's mansion, and there was an altar floating above the City Lord's mansion. On the altar, there was a stone coffin. At this time, the stone coffin emitted an extremely powerful wave of divine power. There seemed to be an extremely powerful existence trapped in the stone coffin. The stone coffin was constantly shaking, and the old general guarding the stone coffin was surprised and happy. "Is the Lord coming out?" The old general was extremely excited. After all, once the Lord he mentioned broke out of the coffin, they would not have to fear Kang Q anymore. At this time, Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan walked out of the City Lord's mansion. With one step, he appeared on the altar. "Greetings, Lord Saber Emperor." The old general quickly bowed to Yi Jingshan. Yi Jingshan did not speak. He only waved his hand and went to the stone coffin. At this time, the existence in the stone coffin seemed to know his arrival, and it gradually quietened down. However, just as the stone coffin stopped shaking, Yi Jingshan's expression suddenly changed. He turned around and looked into the distant sky outside Nantien City. Yi Jingshan would have been fine if he had not looked, but when he did, he was shocked. In the distant sky outside Nantien City, battle formations rushed out of the void. Although they were very far away, it was obvious who these battle formations were coming for even if one thought with their toes. "They've finally come." Yi Jingshan's expression became solemn when he saw the soldiers continuously coming out of the void. Dang! 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 A bell suddenly rang in Nantien City and spread throughout the entire city. Soon, the soldiers in Nantien City began to move. The soldiers in Nantien City were all from the God Clan army from the South Continent. Soon, 100,000 God Clan soldiers from the South Continent appeared in the sky above Nantien City. At this time, the protective formation of Nantien City was activated. A ball of divine light rushed out of the City Lord's mansion and enveloped the entire Nantien City. Kang Q is taking action so soon? The experts from the South Continent were shocked by Kang Q's formation. There were hundreds of thousands of God Clan soldiers. The murderous aura they gathered could crush the sky. It was extremely terrifying. Swoosh! Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan's figure disappeared from the altar. The next moment, he appeared in front of the God Clan army from the South Continent. "Kang Q, what do you mean by this?" Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan stared at the hundreds of thousands of soldiers in the sky and said in a deep voice. Although his voice was not loud, Kang Q heard it. "Get lost or die," Kang Q said directly. He did not want to talk nonsense with these guys from the South Continent. "What did you say? You want to be the overlord of the Central Continent?" Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan said disdainfully. "Kill." Hearing Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan's words, Kang Q roared and attacked. Then, the hundreds of thousands of soldiers behind him also moved. Rumble, the whole world shook. The next moment, countless rays of divine light flew out from the battle formation of the hundreds of thousands of soldiers and fell on Nantien City like raindrops. The divine light formed by the power of the protective formation of Nantien City shook violently. The God Clan soldiers in Nantien City could not help but change their expressions when they saw this. Boom! At this moment, there was a loud noise. The entire protective formation of Nantien City shook violently. The divine light covering the entire Nantien City dimmed. Strengthen the power of the protective formation. Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan ordered loudly. Buzz. In the next moment, the divine light barrier, which had dimmed down, immediately lit up again. Rumble. The sound of wind and thunder rang out. The battle formations of the powerful clans were operating crazily. Terrifying power was constantly gathering, and endless divine light illuminated the whole world. Saber Emperor, do you dare to come out and fight? A voice was heard outside Nantian City. It passed through the protective formation and into Nantian City. Every soldier from the South Continent heard it. Saber Master Nai Jingyun. Inside Nantian City, Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan, who was standing in front of the God Clan army from the South Continent, frowned when he heard the voice. Nai Jingyun had come and challenged him. One battle to determine the winner? If that's the case, then I'll have a battle with you. Yi Jingshan said calmly. All right, one battle to determine the winner. If we lose, we will retreat. If you lose, get out of my sight. At this moment, Kang Q's voice was suddenly heard. Then, the aggressive God Clan army of hundreds of thousands stopped and retreated into the sky. Seeing this, the experts from the South Continent in Nantian City were shocked. Kang Q commanded his soldiers as if they were his own arms. This was too awesome. Haha, good. Straightforward. Yi Jingshan laughed and was about to open the protective formation and walk out. However, at this moment, the altar above the City Lord's mansion suddenly exploded with a terrifying wave of divine power. What? Yi Jingshan was surprised and happy. Boss was finally coming out of seclusion. Chapter 36:13. Kang Q finally took action against the South Continent Divine Clan in Nantian City. He wanted to kill the South Continent Divine Clan army in a flash and recapture Nantian City. However, the South Continent Divine Clan army was not to be trifled with. They activated Nantian City's protective formation and the entire Nantian City was immediately shrouded in a layer of divine light. As a result, it was impossible for Kang Q to end the battle quickly. Just as the East Continent Divine Clan army attacked Nantian City, Nai Jingyun challenged South Continent Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan to determine the outcome of the battle. Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan was naturally not afraid of Nai Jingyun and immediately agreed. Just as he was about to open Nantian City's protective formation and walk out, an extremely powerful aura suddenly erupted from the Nantian City governor's mansion. What? A group of experts outside Nantian City could not help but be shocked when they sensed the aura. Even Kang Q felt a sense of danger. Has boss finally recovered? Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan could not help but be surprised and happy when he sensed the aura spreading from the altar high in the sky. Boss could compete with Kang Q and the others after coming out of closed-door cultivation. Rumble. The sarcophagus on the altar was vibrating as incomparably ancient divine runes emerged from the sarcophagus. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth from all directions frantically gathered toward the sarcophagus. However, the creature in the sarcophagus still broke out of the coffin. Saber Emperor, do you dare to come out and fight? Nai Jingyun's voice spread throughout Nantian City. Damn it! Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan in Nantian City was shocked and angry. It seemed to be very disadvantageous for him to fight Nai Jingyun now. Boss was about to break out of the coffin anyway, so he could just wait. Haha, the dignified Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan is actually a coward. Nai Jingyun's voice sounded again. Every cultivator in Nantian City heard his voice and was extremely shocked. Someone was actually challenging Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan? What did you say? Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan could not help but be furious when he heard Nai Jingyun's words. No one had ever dared to call him a coward. Nai Jingyun deserved to die. Haha. Nai Jingyun laughed and said, isn't that so? Do you dare to come out and fight? If you don't dare to come out and fight, then what are you if not a coward? Nai Jingyun, you're dead meat. Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan fiercely stared at the hateful guy outside. His eyes were almost spitting fire. He had never been looked down upon like this before. Then, Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan was really going to open the Nantian City's protective array. Lord Saber Emperor, what are you doing? At this moment, the old general rushed down from the altar, wanting to stop Yi Jingshan. I'm going out to kill that guy. Yi Jingshan was furious. Lord Saber Emperor, please don't. Don't fall for the other party's provocation. The old general hurriedly said. Humph. Do you think I'm that easy to trick? After saying that, Yi Jingshan waved his hand and forced the old general to retreat. Then, he opened Nantian City's protective array and walked out. The old general hurriedly closed Nantian City's protective formation. Kang Qiu and the others did not take the opportunity to attack. They were all people with principles. With their level of cultivation, they naturally had their own pride. Nai Jingyun, Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan came in front of Nai Jingyun and stared at the guy who was known as the Saber Ancestor from the East Continent. A shocking battle intent erupted from his body. The South Saber Emperor and the East Saber Ancestor were recognized by the entire cultivation world of the ancestral god realm as the two supreme experts of the Saber principle. However, they had never met before, let alone fought against each other. Everyone was guessing who was stronger between the two supreme experts of the Saber principle. At this moment, the two supreme beings of the Blade Tao had finally met. This was definitely a clash between the two. Even though the two supreme beings of the Blade Tao had yet to make a move, the void between the two of them had already ruptured into a series of pitch-black spatial cracks that were constantly appearing. This was already a scene like this before they even made a move. Once they really started fighting, wouldn't it destroy the world? The surrounding experts were extremely shocked and hurriedly retreated. They did not want to be affected by the battle between the two supreme experts. One had to know that being affected by the battle between experts of this level would definitely result in the destruction of both body and soul. No one wanted to die so unjustly. Rumble. The space around Yi Jingshan and Nai Jingyun became unstable. Powerful waves of power emanated from their bodies, causing the space around them to tremble. Shocking saber aura erupted from their bodies. The invisible saber aura streaked across the void, leaving behind dark spatial cracks. At this moment, the aura of the two supreme experts of the Saber principle was rising rapidly. It was so oppressive that everyone could hardly breathe. This aura was so powerful that even the world seemed to lose its color. Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan did not dare to be negligent. Although he seemed to be angered by Nai Jingyun's words, he was extremely calm. Even his breathing was rhythmic. On the other hand, Nai Jingyun also regarded Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan as his strongest opponent. The huge saber on his back was constantly vibrating and humming. It could be unsheathed at any time. Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan's saber did not appear. However, everyone knew that once the saber of the Saber Emperor was unsheathed, it would definitely see blood before it was sheathed. The Saber Emperor was famous for killing with a single slash. Because of this, Nai Jingyun did not dare to make a move. If the other party made a move, he would probably be killed in an instant. Although Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan was the ancestor of killing with a single slash, he also did not dare to use his single slash. If he failed to kill his opponent with a single slash, he would probably be killed instead. The two experts of the Saber principle were confronting each other. However, neither of them had any flaws and neither dared to make a move. An hour had passed, and the two of them were still staring at each other. Nai Jingyun's breathing and blinking were very rhythmic. He had adjusted the aura of his entire body to its best state. There was not even a drop of sweat on his forehead. Yi Jingshan was the same. Everything about his body was very rhythmic. It was as if he had integrated with the entire void. There was no flaw in his body at all. As a result, countless experts who were watching the battle from afar were in a daze with the two of them. How long are these two guys going to stand there? Some people muttered. Time passed. Another hour had passed, but Yi Jingshan and Nai Jingtian still showed no signs of making a move. What's going on? Are the two great experts of the Saber principle competing to see who can stand longer? Some people were starting to get a little impatient. However, only true experts could see the level of danger between the two experts of the Saber principle. At this time, whoever showed a flaw first would be killed by the other party in the next moment. At this time, Nai Jingyun had also been killed with a single slash. Therefore, the two of them had no flaws at all. It was as if their entire bodies had turned into flawless heavenly swords. These two guys are freaks. Kang Q simply took out a table and some chairs from his inner world. He then took out some wine and dishes and began to eat and drink leisurely. Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. Kang Q really knew how to enjoy life. In fact, Kang Q had been influenced by Jiu Fei. He also wanted to live a free and unfettered life. Perhaps he would even enter the world to train. This way, he might be able to restore his cultivation to its peak. Unknowingly, several hours had passed. Yi Jingshan and Nai Jingyun were still motionless, which made everyone speechless. More than half a day had passed, and the two guys were still standing there foolishly. At this time, the mighty waves of divine power coming from Nantian City were getting stronger. At this time, everyone knew that an extremely powerful existence was about to be born in Nantian City. Rumble, the entire Nantian City was shaking. Great Ancestor, something is wrong. Is Yi Jingshan stalling for time? The Golden Rock Goddess came to Kang Q's side and said, "Stalling for time?" Kang Q frowned. The existence in Nantian City should be Nan Batian. Nan Batian had not fallen, but had been hiding in the stone coffin. If Nan Batian were to be born again, his cultivation and combat strength would definitely be stronger than before. A power that was invincible below the extreme grade was gathering. At this time, the experts of the East Continent outside Nantian City were a little uneasy. This level of power was too terrifying. Once Nan Batian was born, it would not be so easy for them to attack Nantian City. Now, as long as they could take down Blade Emperor Yi Jingshan, they could attack Nantian City with irresistible force. Kang Q and the others were ready. It was not difficult for them to break through Nantian City's protective formation. Fellow Taoist, are we still waiting? The demon god also came to Kang Q's side. It'll be bad if we wait any longer. The sword slave's figure appeared nearby. They could already see that something was wrong. Once the existence in Nantian City came out, the East Continent's Protoss army would suffer heavy casualties even if they could attack Nantian City. That was something no one wanted to see. It would be a tragedy if they fought with the South Continent's Protoss army and both sides suffered heavy losses. We'll wait for another hour. If they still don't make a move, we'll attack Nantian City. Kang Q glanced at everyone and said in a deep voice. He did not want to wait any longer. Seeing that Kang Q had said so, the demon god and the others did not say anything else. 1 hour it was. Yi Jingshan and Nai Jingyun could probably stand there for a few days and nights. Soon, 1 hour had passed, and the two did not show any signs of making a move. Kang Q directly waved his hand, and the Earth Spirit Clan's army immediately charged toward Nantian City under the leadership of the Earth Spirit Ancestor. A shocking murderous aura spread from the battle formation, causing the world to lose its color. Boom! With a loud bang, the entire protective formation shook. The Earth Spirit Clan's Protoss army's combat strength was shocking, and the protective formation of Nantian City was almost broken. Chapter 36:14. The war in the central continent of the ancestral god realm had only stopped for a few days. Now, it was reignited, and Kang Q made his move. This time, his target was the Protoss army of the South Continent. Under the leadership of Nan Batian, the God Clan army of South Continent took advantage of the chaos in Zhengzhou State and directly invaded the southern region of Zhengzhou State. They occupied the most important ancient city in the southern region of Zhengzhou State, Nantian City. At this time, the forces that were still watching from the sidelines were inexplicably shocked. Kang Q really started a war at the slightest disagreement. There was no other way. Kang Q was so powerful that he had hundreds of thousands of Protoss army of the East Continent. He was invincible and even destroyed the Pang clan. Ever since the Great War of Gods and Demons, this kind of cultivation clan that had been passed down for countless years was rarely destroyed. There was no doubt that the Pang clan was powerful. It was not that the Pang clan was not strong enough, but that Kang Q was stronger. Hence, the Pang clan was out of luck. At this time, Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan and Saber Master Nai Jingyun were still confronting each other. However, Kang Q and the others were impatient, so they directly attacked Nantian City. They were not that stupid. If the guy in Nantian City came out, they would be in great trouble. Swoosh! The sword slave also attacked. An immortal sword light rushed out from his hand and instantly soared tens of thousands of meters, landing directly on the Nantian city's protective divine light. In the next moment, a hole immediately appeared on the Nantian city's protective divine light. In a flash, the sword slave appeared directly in the sky above Nantian city. A cold sword aura erupted from his body, and the temperature of the entire void dropped rapidly. The first person to attack Nantian city was the sword slave. The sword slave had an extreme great path sword in his hand, which could easily break the layer of divine light formed by the power of the protective formation. Seeing the sword slave suddenly appear in the sky above Nantian city, the experts of the South Continent were dumbfounded. How was this possible? Was this guy an extreme great path supreme being? Although the sword slave was not a true extreme great path supreme being, in the distant past, he was a true extreme great path supreme being. Kill. Without any hesitation, the 100,000 Protoss army of the South Continent directly attacked the sword slave. The battle formation was frantically operating, and power that was infinitely close to the extreme great path erupted. In the next moment, countless rays of divine light flew out from the formation and rained down on the sword slaves. The sword slave sneered and casually waved his right hand. The immortal sword light rushed out from his hand once again. With a flash of the sword light, the countless divine lights that were stabbing at him were directly destroyed in the void. 9 heaven-punishing swords, 1 sword to split the sky. The sword slave let out a furious roar, and another sword light shot out from his hand. Like a heavenly river falling from the sky, it fell toward the battle formation formed by the South Continent soldiers. At this time, 100,000 South Continent soldiers raised the shields in their hands at the same time. Countless runes rushed out from the shields, interweaving into a huge divine diagram. An extremely powerful power of the divine Tao erupted from the divine diagram. However, at the instant that the sword servant's sword light descended onto the divine diagram, it actually easily slashed the divine diagram into 2. In the next moment, even the shields in the hands of the South Continent's soldiers shattered. The entire South Continent's battle formation was also split in half by the sword slave's sword light. Blood splashed in the battle formation, and thousands of South Continent's Protoss soldiers were directly killed by the sword light, turning into a mist of blood. In the void, the smell of blood permeated the air. The Protoss generals of the South Continent were directly stunned by this scene. They couldn't believe it. Who is this guy? Is he really an extreme great path supreme being? This is absolutely impossible. Even if this person is an extreme great path supreme being, he absolutely wouldn't dare to display the power of the extreme great path unless he has a death wish. However, if it wasn't the power of the extreme great path, how could it directly break their battle formation? The old general was also dumbfounded. He never thought that this guy would be so strong. With a wave of his hand, he broke their battle formation. This kind of combat strength is really abnormal. Rumble. At this time, the destructive sword light that the sword slave slashed out actually fell on Nantian city below. The entire Nantian city shook and was shaken. However, the ancient divine city could not be destroyed. The sword slave's destructive sword light was directly blocked by the ancient divine city and finally dissipated in the void. All the South Continent soldiers were frightened by this scene. Who the hell are you? The old general directly rode up on his battle beast and glared angrily at the sword slave opposite him. His eyes looked like they were about to spit fire, and his whole body was full of battle intent. At this time, the South Continent soldiers all stopped, and the leading generals looked at the terrifying figure in front of them in horror. However, the sword slave did not take this old general seriously. This guy's cultivation level was too low, and he was not qualified to be the sword slave's opponent at all. Of course, if this little guy dared to attack the sword slave, he wouldn't mind casually sending this guy on his way. The sword slave ignored the old general and only stared at the ancient altar in the sky above the Nantian city lord's mansion. His gaze fell on the stone coffin on the altar. The waves of divine power that emanated from the stone coffin were still constantly increasing, and it was extremely terrifying. Ancient divine runes appeared and intertwined on the surface of the sarcophagus, emitting an immortal divine light. The entire sarcophagus was enveloped in an immortal divine light. Rumble, the entire stone coffin shook continuously, and cracks appeared on its surface as if it could collapse at any time. The existence inside the stone coffin was about to break out. The old general was shocked and angry. The sword slave had directly ignored him, but he definitely had the right to ignore him. Kill. The old general knew that he was no match for the sword slave, but he still attacked. He urged the battle beast under him to directly charge at the sword slave, and at the same time, the battle spear in his hand stabbed at the sword slave. The sword slave directly waved his hand, and the old general was directly sent flying with his battle beast. The battle beast under him directly exploded in the void, and blood splattered all over the old general. The old general was in an extremely sorry state, and the battle armor on his body was covered with sword marks. The sword slave did not use the sky-punishing sword ray. He only casually waved an invisible sword aura, and it actually defeated the old general. The scene made the South Continent generals and soldiers feel a chill in their hearts. How were they supposed to fight? When did such a powerful guy appear in the East Continent? Why didn't any news come from the East Continent beforehand? Cough, cough. The old general from the South Continent coughed up blood. He felt a wave of sadness. The battle beast that had followed him for most of his life was destroyed just like that. All the South Continent generals looked at the old general. One must know that the old general was the most powerful existence in the South Continent Ultimate God Army apart from South Continent Blade Emperor Yi Jingshan and Nan Batian. However, the old general was not even qualified to let the sword slave use his sword. Boom. Right at that moment, a loud noise was heard. The entire Nantian city's protective formation was directly broken from the outside. Kang Qiu took the lead and directly killed his way into Nantian City. The Earth Spirit Clan's army, the Heavenly God Clan's army, and the Black Snake Clan's army directly surrounded the 100,000 South Continent Protoss army. The Shiman Clan's army also followed and killed their way into Nantian City. Shocking sword aura shrouded the entire Nantian City. Even the mortals in Nantian City felt the surrounding temperature drop rapidly. At that moment, the mortals in Nantian City were hiding in their houses and did not dare to come out. All of them were extremely terrified as they were all praying that the battle between gods would end soon. The ancient divine city had been the scene of countless battles between gods since ancient times. One must know that the ancient divine city was the target of contention from all sides. That was because the ancient divine city was a manifestation of strength and status. Whoever could become the owner of the ancient divine city would be the boss and overlord of the entire region. Naturally, Kang Qiu would not allow these fellows from the South Continent to occupy Nantian City. Facing the tidal wave of East Continent's Protoss soldiers, the South Continent's Protoss soldiers were so scared that their legs were trembling. They were extremely terrified. It was impossible for them to win this battle. They were bound to lose. The Protoss soldiers of the South Continent were almost in despair. Even the South Continent's generals were in despair. No wonder the Pang clan was defeated and exterminated. Only now did they know that the Pang clan's defeat was not unjust. Kill, leave no one alive. Kang Qiu directly ordered. He had already given them a chance, but they did not know how to cherish it. Therefore, they could not blame him for being ruthless at this time. Kang Qiu was a decisive person, he would not drag his feet. Kill. Hundreds of thousands of East Continent soldiers roared at the same time. Their voices were earth-shattering, and their killing intent shook the 9 heavens. Then, the battle formation of the East Continent soldiers moved and operated crazily. The entire world seemed to be collapsing. Kill, let's go all out. Killing one is worth it, killing two is worth it. The old general of the South Continent roared in anger. He was still coughing out blood. His hands that were holding the spear were stained with blood. He raised the spear in his hand, and the power of the spear was completely unleashed by him. A terrifying aura erupted from the spear in his hand. Not bad. Killing one is worth it, killing two is worth it. Kill. 100,000 Protoss warriors of the South Continent roared and went berserk. Then, they charged towards the warriors of the various races of the East Continent. The South Continent's Protoss soldiers were forced into a corner. Naturally, they would do anything in desperation. Haha, You overestimate yourself. The third ancestor of the Earth Spirit clan laughed. One should know that the hundreds of thousands of Protoss soldiers of the East Continent could absolutely crush the South Continent's Protoss soldiers. However, just as the Protoss soldiers of the South Continent were about to clash with the East Continent's Protoss soldiers, a loud bang suddenly came from the altar. Kang Q and the others quickly looked over and saw that the stone coffin on the altar had exploded, and a figure appeared on the altar. Boundless divine radiance quickly converged, and soon, all the divine radiance disappeared on the figure. This person was Nan Batian, who was suspected to have died in the battle. Chapter 36:15. Nan Batian was definitely one of the most powerful beings in the South Continent. Otherwise, he would not have led the South Continent's Divine Clan army into the Central Continent. Not everyone had the courage to lead the Divine Clan army into the Central Continent to fight against the super forces of the Central Continent. However, when Nan Batian fought against the Nantien City Lord, he forced the Nantien City Lord, Pang Aotian, to self-destruct. The self-destruction of a peak quasi-supreme master was absolutely terrifying. Pang Aotian seemed to have achieved his goal. After he self-destructed, Nan Batian also disappeared. Everyone thought that Nan Batian had died. However, only 1 or 2 people in the South Continent's Divine Clan army knew that Nan Batian would not die so easily. It was impossible for Pang Aotian to bring Nan Batian along with him. At this time, on the altar above the Nantien City Lord's mansion, a figure burst out a domineering and terrifying aura, making everyone's heart palpitate. Kang Q. The figure on the altar stared at Kang Q. 2 extremely sharp eyes shot out from his eyes and turned into 2 immortal sword lights that shot towards Kang Q. Humph. Kang Q sneered. His aura also burst out. He used to be a supreme god ancestor. What had he not experienced and what had he not seen? Nan Batian was powerful, but no matter how powerful he was, he could not be as powerful as Gu Fei. Damn it, who's talking behind my back again? In the East Continent, in the ancestral land of the chaotic Golden Rock clan, Gu Fei suddenly sneezed. At this time, a strange scene appeared in the sky above Nantien City. A figure blocked hundreds of thousands of Divine Clan army. It was absolutely shocking and strange to see a figure blocking hundreds of thousands of Divine Clan army all by himself. Ha ha! Lord Batian has come out of seclusion. You're all going to die. The old general from the South Continent laughed crazily. Is your lackey this kind of quality? Kang Q did not look at the old soldier. Instead, he stared at Nan Batian on the altar. You don't have to care about the quality of my men. Nan Batian said domineeringly. Kang Q, do you dare to fight me? The old general said with a murderous look. Kang Q didn't say anything, but an old man walked out from behind him. It was Peng Jingtian. You don't have the qualifications to fight with my ancestor. Let me send you on your way. As Peng Jingtian spoke, he slammed his palm towards the old general. A violent palm force erupted from his palm and instantly enveloped the old general. The old general did not dare to be careless. He threw a punch, and the image of an extremely ferocious beast appeared on his body. A powerful pressure erupted from the image, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Boom! The fist and the palm collided, and 2 powerful waves of divine power erupted. The vast waves of divine power shook the surrounding space, and in the midst of the collapsing divine light, divine patterns were continuously dissipating. The South Continent veteran general was sent flying backwards, but Peng Jingtian remained unmoved. You can't even withstand a single blow, and you still want to fight against my clan's ancestor? You're simply overestimating yourself. Peng Jingtian said disdainfully. He took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of the old general. He stretched out his hand and directly grabbed the old general's neck, lifting him up. The old general's cultivation was immediately sealed by Peng Jingtian's divine power. How dare you? The figure on the altar shouted, and a huge hand directly grabbed towards Peng Jingtian. The huge hand instantly covered the entire sky. A powerful wave of divine power erupted from the huge hand. What? Peng Jingtian felt a powerful force pressing down on him, as if a divine mountain was pressing down on him. He couldn't move his body. Bullsh*T. Kang Q roared, and a ray of sword light rushed out from his body, directly destroying the huge hand that was grabbing towards Peng Jingtian. Peng Jingtian felt his body lighten, and his entire body felt comfortable. Then, he grabbed the old general and returned to his camp. "Let me go, I'm Lord Baishan's man. If you kill me, Lord Batian will never let you go." The old general stared coldly at Peng Jingtian and said arrogantly, "Haha, did a monkey invite you here to fool around? Do you think I'm afraid of Nan Batian?" Peng Jingtian laughed. Hearing Peng Jingtian's words, the old general's expression changed immediately. Peng Jingtian didn't listen to the old general's nonsense anymore. He exerted some force in his hand, and the light in the old general's eyes disappeared, and he became a dead body. Killing a quasi-supreme being was as simple as that. "You're courting death." Seeing that Peng Jingtian had killed the old general, Nan Batian was completely terrified. He directly rushed down from the altar and attacked Peng Jingtian. An extremely domineering divine light rushed out of Nan Baishan's hand and pierced towards Peng Jingtian. Although they were both quasi-supreme beings, Nan Baishan's combat power was definitely enough to crush Peng Jingtian. This was absolutely undeniable. "Your opponent is me." At this time, Kang Q's body flashed, and he appeared in front of Peng Jingtian. Hum! The sound of a sword rang out, and an immortal sword light rushed out from his body, instantly colliding with the destructive divine light that had pierced through. The mighty divine power rippled out, and Peng Jingtian, who was behind Kang Q, was shaken off. Peng Jingtian was extremely shocked. This Nan Batian was indeed abnormal. They were both quasi-supreme beings, but the gap between them was too big. At this time, Kang Q and Nan Batian started fighting. The two experts soared into the sky, and directly killed their way out of southern Sky City. Kill. At this time, under Peng Jingtian's roar, the Divine Race Army of the East Continent immediately attacked the Divine Race Army of the South Continent. Kill. The Divine Race Army of the South Continent also broke out. The Divine Race soldiers of the South Continent fought with all their might, and they had no choice but to do so. After all, they were surrounded by hundreds of thousands of Divine Race soldiers from the East Continent. To break out of the encirclement, they would definitely have to pay a heavy price. Boom! Countless Divine Race soldiers collided with each other. In the next moment, endless divine light exploded, and battle cries shook the heavens and the earth. Bloody light suddenly appeared, and figures fell from the sky. The sky was raining blood. That was the god's blood rain. When the god's blood fell on southern Sky City, it went deep into the ground and disappeared completely. Not a single drop of blood could be seen on the ground. However, the corpses that fell from the sky smashed into southern Sky City. The mortals in southern Sky City all hid. No one dared to come out at this time, unless they wanted to die. Of course, some rogue cultivators were not afraid, and quietly came out to collect their trash. The Divine Race soldiers still had some good stuff on them. After all, the Divine Race soldiers were at the immortal realm. In the sky above southern Sky City, countless soldiers from the two camps fought madly. Battle formations against battle formations, weapons clashed, and murderous intent soared into the sky. The whole world was dyed red by the god's blood. Rumble. At this time, the ancient altar that floated above the City Lord's office of southern Sky City moved. Layers of killing formations rushed out from the ancient altar, releasing terrifying destructive power. Countless East Continent soldiers were enveloped by the power of the killing formations and fell from the sky. Their primordial spirits were devoured by the killing formations, and only their shells were left. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. No one expected Nan Batian to have such a trick up his sleeve. However, at this moment, an immortal swordlight directly descended from the sky. Wherever the swordlight passed, the layers of killing formations were directly broken and countless formation runes dissipated in the void. Swoosh! The immortal sword light flashed, and the entire ancient altar was split in half. In this way, all the killing formations on the ancient altar collapsed at the same time. The destructive power formed by the collapse of the killing formations was too terrifying. The void was destroyed along with the formation patterns, as if it was going to destroy heaven and earth. Some East Continent and South Continent soldiers who could not dodge in time were directly destroyed in body and soul. Even the things on their bodies were crushed by the destructive power, leaving nothing behind. Retreat. The commanders of the battle formations ordered. The 3 battle formations of the Earth Spirit clan began to retreat, the battle formation of the Heavenly God clan also retreated into the sky, and the battle formation of the Black Snake clan was the fastest. The battle formation of the Black Snake clan could no longer withstand too many casualties, and they were almost unable to form a battle formation. The battle formation of the Shimon clan was not slow either. At this time, the ancient altar exploded, and the destructive power spread in all directions. A huge black hole appeared between heaven and earth, devouring everything around it. The consequences of being slow were very serious. The God clan soldiers of the South Continent were also retreating, but they were greatly impacted by the destructive power. One by one, the soldiers were directly shattered in the void, turning into clouds of blood mist. In just a moment, tens of thousands of South Continent soldiers were killed, and then they were devoured by the black hole in the sky. The generals of the South Continent were going crazy. No one thought that Nan Bashan's backup plan could be broken by someone. That expert of sword principle was too terrifying. With a sword in hand, that expert of sword principle seemed to be able to kill all enemies. This kind of existence was very terrifying, even more terrifying than the Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan. At this time, the South Continent's celestial race army directly rushed towards the distant sky. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Although the ancient sacrificial altar had been destroyed, they had unexpectedly escaped the encirclement of the East Continent's celestial race army. Trying to escape. The experts of the East Continent were displeased when they saw this. If they let these guys escape, how could they bear it? They led the battle formation and chased after the God clan army of the South Continent. This was a great pursuit. Countless soldiers flew across the sky, and the murderous aura they exuded frightened countless living beings to the extreme. To the God clan soldiers of the South Continent, this was an incomparably tragic escape. The God clan army of the East Continent chased after them relentlessly. Chapter 36:16. The sword servant attacked domineeringly, and with a single strike of his sword, he destroyed the slaughter formation on the ancient sacrificial altar and slashed it into 2. The ancient sacrificial altar exploded, and the destructive force that erupted directly caused a huge black hole to appear in the void. Countless warriors fell to the ground. Of course, most of the warriors that were affected by the destructive power unleashed by the ancient altar were the warriors of the South Continent. Rumble. The entire sky above Nantian City was shrouded by a huge black hole. The black hole devoured everything around it as if it could destroy heaven and earth. Everyone retreated far, far away from it. The South Continent soldiers formed a battle formation and fled. Even the old general had died. How could they be a match for the East Continent soldiers? The South Continent's Protoss general led nearly 100,000 South Continent soldiers in a frenzy to escape. 100,000 people formed a dark mass in the sky. It was like a black cloud drifting across the sky at high speed. 100,000 South Continent soldiers were all fleeing for their lives. It was an absolutely shocking scene. However, an even more shocking scene was yet to come. Countless South Continent soldiers rushed over from all directions, then gathered together and chased after the fleeing South Continent soldiers. The experts from the other forces of Central Continent were stunned by this scene. Hundreds of thousands of East Continent soldiers filled every inch of the void in the sky, covering the entire sky. There were figures everywhere. The extremely terrifying murderous intent changed the color of heaven and earth. Battle cries shook the sky and the earth. The flames of war rose again in Central Continent, alarming countless forces, especially those from Central Continent. No one knew how many experts had come to the vicinity of Nantian City. Even the remnants of the Skyfire clan had come. Experts of the fire doctrine could be seen in the distant sky. After all, the Skyfire clan was one of the 3 superpowers of Central Continent. It was absolutely impossible for the Pang clan to kill all the clansmen of the Skyfire clan. Even Kang Q couldn't kill all the clansmen of the Pang clan. No one knew how many clansmen of the Pang clan had gone into hiding. Attack! A loud shout came from the East Continent's battle formation. Then, Countless South Continent soldiers smashed the spears in their hands at the same time. The spears shot up into the sky and turned into countless divine lights that fell on the South Continent's Protoss battle formation. Defend. An angry roar came from the battle formation of the South Continent soldiers. Swoosh. Countless soldiers from the South Continent raised the shields in their hands, and a layer of divine light enveloped the entire battle formation. In the next moment, countless battle spears landed on the defensive formation of the South Continent's battle formation. Dense sounds of collisions rang out, and the raining battle spears were all blocked. This time, the warriors from the South Continent were no longer flustered. This wave of attacks from the East Continent's warriors did not hurt any of them. Ha, the deity clan can't hold on any longer. A loud laugh came from one of the Earth Spirit clan's battle formations. The third ancestor of the Earth Spirit clan was standing on a war chariot in the center of the battle formation, laughing loudly. A cold laugh came from the Heavenly God clan's battle formation. The Heavenly God clan's battle formation was right next to the third Earth Spirit ancestor's battle formation. The one who launched the attack just now was the Heavenly God clan's battle formation. At this time, the spears that the deity clan's soldiers had thrown out all flew back and landed in the hands of each soldier. If you guys are good, go ahead. An elder of the Heavenly God clan roared at the third Earth Spirit ancestor. Among the 4 great ancestors of the Earth Spirit clan, the third Earth Spirit ancestor loved to show off and cause trouble the most. Among the 4 great ancestors, the third Earth Spirit ancestor was also the most unscrupulous, arrogant, and coquettish. Moreover, this fellow was the least susceptible to provocation. Haha, let's go. Do you think I can't handle these defeated soldiers? The third Earth Spirit ancestor said disdainfully, then roared an order. Swoosh. All the soldiers in the third progenitor's battle formation immediately threw out their battle spears, each spear piercing through the air and piercing through the air. 4,000. Incomparably powerful energy waves erupted from them. What? The clan leader of the Heavenly God clan couldn't help but be shocked. The offensive power of the Earth Spirit clan's battle formation was much stronger than his own. Countless rays of divine light shot up into the sky, piercing through the void. Everywhere the spears passed, countless pitch-black spatial cracks were left in the void. Defend. The South Continent soldiers were incomparably nervous when they saw the Earth Spirit clan's battle formation attacking them. They hurriedly gave the order to defend. The South Continent soldiers raised their divine shields at the same time. The divine shields joined together to form an incomparably huge formation. This was a combined defensive formation. The divine shields in the hands of countless soldiers were imprinted with defensive formations. When countless divine shields were put together, they formed a super defensive formation. At this moment, countless spears turned into divine light that fell from the sky. They directly broke through the layer of divine light above the South Continent's battle formation and pierced the divine shields. Concentrated sounds of collision resounded. Most of the spears were blocked, but some spears pierced through the divine shields in the hands of the South Continent soldiers and nailed them to death in the void. In the next moment, hundreds and thousands of South Continent soldiers fell from the sky. Ha! How is it? My battle formation is stronger than yours, right? At this moment, the third Earth Spirit ancestors' wanton laughter resounded from the Earth Spirit battle formation. Hearing this voice, the patriarch of the Heavenly Deity clan, who was in the middle of the battle formation, immediately turned gloomy. This guy was still so annoying. Many old ancestor-level existences in the East Continent didn't like the third Earth Spirit ancestor. In fact, if it wasn't for the first Earth Spirit ancestor protecting his third brother would have been killed countless times. The first Earth Spirit ancestor was one of the strongest old ancestors in the East Continent. Even the old ancestor of the Heavenly God clan didn't want to provoke the first Earth Spirit ancestor. The Earth Spirit clan was far more powerful than the other clans in the East Continent because they had 4 great ancestors. The first Earth Spirit ancestor was once an extreme grade supremacy. In this expedition to the Central Continent, all 4 great ancestors of the Earth Spirit clan were dispatched. Each ancestor was in charge of a battle formation. In other words, the Earth Spirit clan had sent 4 great battle formations. However, The Third Earth Spirit Ancestor's battle formation was almost completely defeated in the battle. Almost all the soldiers under him were killed. However, he was still able to command a battle formation. That was because the other three progenitors had given him some battle weapons so that he could form another battle formation. Haha, you have nothing to say, right? I told you that you can't do it, but you don't believe me. The Third Earth Spirit Ancestor said arrogantly. This fellow, the elders of the Heavenly God clan were furious. However, since their Lord didn't say anything, they couldn't do anything. After all, the Third Earth Spirit Ancestor was also an old ancestor-level existence. At this moment, a sharp piercing sound came from the sky. The entire void shook. Everyone looked at the divine light falling from the sky in fear. It turned out that the South Continent's battle formation was counterattacking. Countless spears turned into divine light and fell towards the Third Earth Spirit Ancestor's battle formation. Defend. The Third Earth Spirit Ancestor's voice sounded in the Earth Spirit battle formation. Then, the soldiers in the battle formation raised their divine shields at the same time. Every divine shield in the hands of the Earth Spirit clan's soldiers shone with divine light. The divine light enveloped the entire battle formation. The Third Earth Spirit Ancestor's voice was extremely arrogant. He didn't seem to care about the attack of the South Continent's soldiers at all. Third brother, be careful. The Second Earth Spirit Ancestor's voice sounded in the Third Earth Spirit Ancestor's mind. Don't worry, second brother, the Third Earth Spirit Ancestor said nonchalantly. At this moment, the spears of the South Continent's soldiers had already landed on the Third Earth Spirit Ancestor's battle formation. Dense sounds of metal clashing could be heard. In the next moment, the Third Earth Spirit Ancestor's face stiffened. He saw that some of the spears had pierced through the divine shields in the hands of the Earth Spirit clan soldiers and pinned them to the void. The South Continent's battle formation's counterattack had actually killed thousands of Earth Spirit clan soldiers. This made the Third Earth Spirit Ancestor almost go crazy. Damn it! The Third Earth Spirit Ancestor's face was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. Hehe, the Earth Spirit clan is just SOSO. In the Heavenly God clan's battle formation, the Heavenly God clan's elders immediately mocked the Third Earth Spirit Ancestor. How dare you! The Third Earth Spirit Ancestor almost exploded in anger when he heard the words coming from the Heavenly God clan's battle formation. However, he couldn't do anything as he felt suffocated in his chest. Kill. Kill them all. The Third Earth Spirit Ancestor roared crazily. The counterattack of the South Continent's battle formation had actually caused him to lose thousands of soldiers. This was a huge slap to his face. This made the Third Earth Spirit Ancestor feel humiliated. Soldiers were born to be tools of slaughter. They would only listen to their commander. Once the Third Earth Spirit Ancestor gave the order, they wouldn't even blink an eye even if they were to die. In the next moment, the Earth Spirit soldiers under the command of the Third Earth Spirit Ancestor started moving. The battle formation revolved crazily and a huge figure appeared in the battle formation. The power of the battle formation gathered crazily and condensed into a terrifying shadow of a ferocious beast. The beast roared at the sky and the entire void shook along with its roar. Roar. The ferocious beast roared furiously as it charged out of the Third Earth Spirit Ancestor's battle formation and pounced towards the South Continent's battle formation. However, in the next moment, a huge battle spear shadow shot out from the South Continent's battle formation and pierced the ferocious beast that was pouncing towards them. The battle spear pierced through the ferocious beast's shadow and the next moment, the shadow of the ferocious beast dissipated in the void. What? Chapter 36:17. Being slapped in the face made the Third Ancestor very unhappy. He wanted to show off but didn't expect the South Continent's people to be so strong. Hearing the Elder's mockery, the Third Ancestor was furious. He wanted to fight the South Continent's troops to the death. However, though the South Continent's troops were fleeing, their strength was still there. How could the Third Ancestor's troops suppress the South Continent's? You want to kill us all? Did a monkey invite you here to mess with us? Ha ha! A loud laugh came from the South Continent's troops. Hearing this, the Third Ancestor almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He then shouted at the South Continent God race soldiers that were running for their lives, "Don't run if you have the gut. Humph. Do you dare to ask them to stop, and then bring your lackeys to chase after us? The voice from the South Continent's Protoss battle formation rang out again. The third ancestor was enraged, but he didn't lose his mind. He only had 10,000 men while the other side had 100,000. There were also dozens of South Continent's experts. Though the old general from South Continent had fallen, the other South Continent's experts weren't weak either. What, you don't dare? So you're just a piece of trash. You don't have the ability and yet you dare to show off. What a joke. Laughter came from the South Continent's troops, their tone full of disdain. Haha, who doesn't know that East Continent's third brother is trash? Another voice came from the South Continent's troops. This is infuriating. The third ancestor's eyes were red. How dare these people look down on him? Damn it, they all deserve to die. Big brother, second brother, fourth brother, you don't need to chase. I can kill them alone. The third ancestor yelled at his three brothers. Third brother, what are you doing? The first ancestor roared. This guy was too easily agitated. If he wasn't his brother, he wouldn't even bother with this guy. At this time, the East Continent's troops were chasing the South Continent's troops. They were about to catch up, but the third ancestor came to cause trouble again. If the South Continent's celestial race's soldiers were to escape, the Earth Spirit clan would lose a lot of face. I'm not crazy. I can handle these guys. The third Earth Spirit ancestor still persisted. He wanted to lead 10,000 Earth Spirit warriors to chase after the South Continent's God Race army alone. In the eyes of others, he was really crazy. Third bro, do you know what you are saying? The second Land Spirit ancestor was furious. How could he not know what kind of person his third brother was? This guy was going to get into trouble again. This was not the East Continent. The consequences of being pregnant with his master were very serious. Second brother, don't you trust me? The third Earth Spirit ancestor was annoyed. With his abilities, he could definitely deal with these fellows from the Southern Continent. We trust you too much. That's why we always clean up after you, but not this time. The second Earth Spirit ancestor said resolutely. He, third brother of the Earth Spirit clan, don't tell me you're scared. At this moment, a disdainful voice came from the South Continent's battle formation. Hey, Di-san, is that all you've got? An elder of the Celestial God clan mocked. The third Earth Spirit ancestor glared at the elder in the Celestial God clan's battle formation. Shut up. At this moment, the Shiman clan's battle formation caught up from behind. The Shiman clan's battle formation was made up of sword cultivators. Tens of thousands of sword lights flew across the sky. It was an extremely spectacular sight. The speed of the sword lights wasn't slow. It actually surpassed the Black Snake clan's battle formation and caught up to the Earth Spirit clan's battle formation. Although the Shiman clan wasn't a superpower, their sword formation was still impressive. Sword chi swept across the sky. Every sword light was terrifying, as if it was going to split the void. The East Continent's God Race army and the South Continent's God Race army were already hundreds of thousands of miles away from Nantian City. You're the one who should shut up. If you continue to cause trouble, I'll seal you in the ancestral land. The first Earth Spirit ancestor roared angrily. The first Earth Spirit ancestor's battle formation was the strongest in the East Continent. The third Earth Spirit ancestor was most afraid of his big brother. But big brother, the third Earth Spirit ancestor wanted to say more. I told you to shut up, but you didn't. Did you ignore my words? The first Earth Spirit ancestor was really angry. He stretched out his right hand and grabbed the third Earth Spirit ancestor's battle formation, pulling him out of the formation. Big brother, no, the third Earth Spirit ancestor was shocked. He hurriedly begged. He didn't want to be sealed in the ancestral land. Too late. The first Earth Spirit ancestor didn't hesitate. He directly sealed the third Earth Spirit ancestor and threw him into his inner world. He would seal this troublemaker in the ancestral land when he returned. Seeing this, even the clan leader of the Celestial God clan was extremely shocked. The first Earth Spirit ancestor was really awesome. He had sealed a powerful quasi-supreme being just like that. This time, The clan elders of the celestial god clan all shut up. They didn't dare to say anything. After the third Earth Spirit ancestor was sealed by his big brother, the soldiers in his battle formation were all absorbed by the fourth Earth Spirit ancestor's battle formation. The battle strength of the fourth Earth Spirit ancestor's battle formation immediately soared, and the energy ripples it emitted became even stronger. Rumble, the void shook. The three great battle formations of the Earth Spirit clan, the Celestial God clan, the Black Snake clan, and the Shaman clan formed a total of 6 battle formations that chased after the South Continent's battle formation at lightning speed. The murderous aura emitted by hundreds of thousands of soldiers was simply too powerful. Wherever it passed, countless living beings on the ground would be terrified to the extreme. Continue chasing if you have the guts. The experts in the South Continent's battle formation couldn't help but change their expressions when they saw this scene. An expert of the South Continent roared at the hundreds of thousands of soldiers chasing after them. Do I need you to tell me that? The clan lord of the celestial deity clan raged. In the next moment, the battle formation of the celestial deity clan changed. Rays of divine light rushed out from the battle formation and pierced through the battle formation of the South Continent celestial race. Attack! A loud shout came from the South Continent's battle formation. Then, rays of divine light shot up into the sky from the South Continent's battle formation like raindrops and fell on the Celestial God Clan's battle formation. The divine light from the Celestial God Clan was directly broken by the divine light from the South Continent's battle formation. The divine light from the South Continent's battle formation continued to fall on the Celestial God Clan's battle formation. Defend! The clan leader of the Celestial God Clan roared angrily. He stared at the divine light falling from the sky with a solemn expression. Every ray of divine light was wrapped in a spear. In the next moment, all the divine light fell on the Celestial God Clan's battle formation and blocked most of the spears. However, many shields were pierced by the spears that flew out from the South Continent's battle formation, nailing the soldiers under the shields to death in the void. Thousands of Celestial God Clan's soldiers fell from the sky like dumplings. Damn it! The clan leader of the Celestial God Clan's face was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. These Celestial God Clan's soldiers were his treasures. It was not an easy task to cultivate a Celestial God Clan. Even a large clan like the Celestial God Clan could only cultivate about 100,000 Celestial God Clan soldiers. It was difficult to cultivate more Celestial God Clan soldiers. After all, a large clan's cultivation resources were limited. While the East Continent's Celestial God Clan's army was pursuing the South Continent's army, Kang-Q and Nan-Batian were fighting in the sky above the Central Continent. Two terrifying energy waves were constantly colliding. These two experts were once extreme-grade supreme beings, but due to some unknown reason, their cultivation had fallen from the extreme-grade supreme being realm. Even though they were no longer extreme-grade supreme beings, the battle strength they displayed was enough to suppress any quasi-supreme being great cultivator. Rumble, Kang-Q stretched out his hand and grabbed a dozen stars, refining them into a dozen divine pearls. He then threw the pearls at Nan-Batian. Nan-Batian smashed his fist forward and violent divine energy ripples exploded from his fist. The dozen divine pearls that were hurling at him exploded immediately. Terrifying destructive energy instantly erupted and swept across the area. The void immediately collapsed and a pitch-black hole appeared. Nan-Batian passed through the black hole and instantly appeared in front of Kang-Q. He threw a punch at Kang-Q's face. It was simple and direct. However, it was this simple and direct attack that produced the most explosive power. Kang-Q did not dodge and also threw a punch. The two fists instantly collided with each other and a muffled sound was heard. The two figures flew backward at the same time. Kill! Kang-Q roared in anger and turned into a phantom. He charged at Nan-Batian and countless phantoms surrounded Nan-Batian. No one knew which one was the real one. Haha, do you want to try this move with me? Nan-Batian laughed. Then, a huge figure emerged from Nan-Batian's body. It was like a giant god that opened the sky. With a sweep of its hand, all of Kang-Q's phantoms were caught in its hand. Nan-Batian did not care that the figure was Kang-Q's real body. The figure clenched its hand and all of Kang Q's phantoms were crushed. However, in the next moment, Nan Baishan's expression changed drastically. Then, his body trembled and a hand pierced through his chest. What? Nan Batian looked at the hand on his chest in disbelief. Chapter 36:18. Above the starry sky of the central continent, the winner of the battle seemed to have been decided. Kang Q's right arm pierced through Nan Baishan's divine body. Then, with a shake of his right hand, Nan Baishan's divine body was shattered into a cloud of blood mist. There were many experts watching the battle in the starry sky. Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. One should know that Nan Batian was one of the most powerful existences in the South Continent, but he was killed by Kang Q. How is this possible? An old man with a sage-like demeanor muttered to himself. In the Central Continent, apart from the experts of the three superforces, there were also many hidden super-experts. These super-experts usually did not care about the outside world and focused on cultivation. But now, these hidden super-experts had no choice but to come out because the battle between Kang Q and the Pang clan had affected the entire Central Continent of the Ancestral God Realm. The chaos of the Ancestral God Realm had arrived. Heroes from all over the Ancestral God Realm rose together to fight for hegemony. Who would become the true ruler of the Ancestral God Realm in the end? Nan Batian won't die so easily. Someone said something like that. When Nan Batian attacked Nantian City, he had fought with the City Lord of Nantian City. The City Lord of Nantian City self-destructed, but he could not kill Nan Batian. Although Kang Q's cultivation was higher than the City Lord's, he could not kill Nan Batian so easily. However, to everyone's disbelief, the cloud of blood mist that Nan Baishan's divine body had turned into dissipated in the void. Nan Baishan's aura had completely disappeared. He really died. Someone could not believe it. Boom. At this moment, an extremely horrifying saber chi suddenly rose from the land of Zhongzhou State and directly into the starry sky. The stars were shaking as if they were about to fall from the starry sky. However, in the next moment, a wave of saber chi burst forth, spreading out in all directions. It turned out that the Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan and the Saber Master Nai Jingyun, who had been confronting each other outside Nantian City, had finally made their move. No one knew who was the first to reveal a flaw, but the battle suddenly broke out. The South Continent's Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan was famous even among the super experts of the Central Continent. In the entire South Continent, there were definitely no more than 3 people who could compete with Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan. Nan Batian was one of them. Now, the Saber Master of the East Continent, Nai Jingyun, had become one of Yi Jingshan's strongest opponents. 2 mighty saber chi surged, and the power of the saber Dao that erupted from the 2 experts tore the void between heaven and earth. 4,000. It was as if they had transformed into 2 heavenly swords, moving rapidly in the void. Wherever the saber light passed, it destroyed everything in its path. At this moment, all the battle formations had left Nantian City. Apart from the mortals, there were no other cultivators in Nantian City. The gigantic black hole in the sky above southern Heaven City rapidly shrank as the laws of heaven and earth of the ancestral god realm repaired the shattered void. The sword slave didn't chase after the southern continent's celestial race army, but he didn't attack Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan either. He just watched from the side. The Saber Emperor was known as the one saber kill. Usually, he only needed 1 saber to kill his opponent. However, it was not possible this time. Buzz. Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan's body emitted the sound of a saber. In the next moment, 10 extremely sharp saber lights rushed out of his body and slashed towards Nai Jingyun. Wherever the saber lights passed, 10 pitch-black spatial cracks were left in the void. Nai Jingyun roared angrily, and his long hair danced in the wind. An extremely powerful saber Dao power erupted from his body, and 10 saber lights rushed out of his body. This was definitely a tit for tat. In the next moment, 10 groups of saber lights appeared in the void between Yi Jingshan and Nai Jingyun. Those were the divine lights that erupted from the collision of the saber lights from the 2 saber Dao experts. The sharp and formless saber chi was like an invisible whirlwind, sweeping out in all directions. Countless black spatial cracks suddenly appeared in the void, as if countless strands of hair had suddenly appeared in the void. Without any warning, blood suddenly appeared on Yi Jingshan's shoulder. He had been hit by Nai Jingyun's saber chi, and a deep saber wound appeared on his left shoulder. However, almost at the same time, a saber wound also appeared on Nai Jingyun's back. However, the saber wound on Nai Jingyun's body was very shallow, and it did not hurt his muscles or bones. However, for saber Dao experts like Yi Jingshan and Nai Jingyun, as long as they were hit by their saber chi, the extremely sharp saber chi would instantly invade the body and destroy the cultivator's vitality. Even if their saber chi cut through the skin, the cultivator would still die. Roar! Nai Jingyun roared angrily. In the next moment, an invisible saber chi rushed out of his body, and the saber chi that had invaded his body was forced out by him. At the same time, Yi Jingshan also forced out the saber chi that had invaded his body. The two saber Dao experts seemed to be evenly matched, and neither could really suppress the other. This was definitely an evenly matched battle, and it would be difficult to determine the winner. Human and saber unity, kill. Nai Jingyun used his trump card. In the next moment, his entire body turned into a saber light and slashed towards Yi Jingshan. The extremely domineering saber light seemed to be able to split the entire world in half. It was so terrifying that it was as if it could split the entire world in half. Compete. Are you the only one who can become one with the saber? Yi Jingshan sneered. His body swayed, and he also turned into a saber light that shot into the sky. In an instant, he collided with the saber light that Nai Jingyun had transformed into. Boom! With a loud bang, the entire void shook violently, and the void was annihilated. The two saber lights kept colliding in the void, giving off the most dazzling saber light. The two saber Dao experts were fighting with their lives on the line. The winner would live, and the loser would die. Moreover, this was a battle between two saber Dao experts in the ancestral divine realm for glory. Who would be the number one saber Dao expert in the ancestral divine realm? Many people were very curious. The battle between Yi Jingshan and Nai Jingyun had attracted countless gazes, and many people wanted to know the outcome of this battle. These two fellows aren't people with undeserved reputations. The sword slave watched the battle from afar. His face was still very calm, and there was no expression on his face. He rarely spoke, but his words were often very incisive. Both Yi Jingshan and Nai Jingyun had cultivated their saber Dao to almost the extreme realm, and these two saber Dao experts were extremely powerful. Just as the two saber Dao experts were fighting, an unbelievable scene happened in the starry sky of the central continent. A figure reappeared in the starry sky. Chapter 36:19. In the ancestral god world's central continent, everyone was dumbfounded. Nan Batian, who was killed by Kang Q, appeared in front of everyone again. How is this possible? Kang Q stared at the figure in front of him and said in disbelief. Wasn't this guy killed by me? Nothing is impossible. I have to thank you. Without you, I wouldn't be able to cultivate the undying tyrant body. Nan Batian stared at Kang Q and sneered. His tone was full of disdain and his attitude was extremely arrogant. Undying tyrant body. Kang Q was shocked. He didn't expect Nan Batian to cultivate the undying tyrant body. It would be difficult to kill this guy now. You can't kill me. Haha. Nan Batian laughed and pounced at Kang Q. His speed was extremely fast. In an instant, he arrived in front of Kang Q and clawed at Kang Q's chest. He had completely given up on defense. Bang! Without any hesitation, Kang Q kicked Nan Batian and sent him flying tens of thousands of meters away. Swish! Kang Q took a step forward and instantly caught up to Nan Batian, who was flying backwards. Then, he stomped down on Nan Batian and a powerful force came down from his leg. The void beneath his feet was collapsing and being destroyed. In the next moment, Nan Batian fell from the sky like a meteorite. There was a footprint on his chest. Boom! With a loud bang, Nan Batian fell from the sky, directly smashing a mountain peak into pieces before smashing into the ground. Rubble flew through the air, dust filled the air, and the entire region shook. Roar! A furious roar came from the ground. Then, the entire ground collapsed, and an extremely terrifying power of the sword Dao erupted from the ground. In the next moment, the entire ground was shaking. An immortal saber light shot up from the ground and into the starry sky. It was aimed at Kang-Q, who was in the depths of the starry sky. The terrifying saber light connected the ground and the starry sky. Everyone was shocked to see this shocking scene. Nan Batian was also an expert in the saber Dao. This was very surprising. Apart from Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan, there was another expert in the saber Dao in the South Continent. You hid it well. An immortal sword light rushed out of Kang-Q's body. Clang. The sound of metal colliding was heard. The blade light and the sword light instantly collided. The blade light and the sword light collapsed, and the immortal divine sword and divine blade appeared in the void, emitting immortal light. A figure walked over from the middle continent. He grabbed the divine saber and slashed at Kang-Q domineeringly. In the next moment, the saber light shot out for thousands of miles. Everywhere it passed, the stars would be destroyed one after another, leaving nothing behind. Buzz. The sound of a sword rang out. Kang-Q directly displayed the golden rock sword technique. The immortal sword light turned into a golden rock and instantly collided with the saber light that was slashing down. This was a contest of power that was infinitely close to the extreme grade realm. Nan Batian was domineering to the extreme as he slashed out again and again. The entire void of the heaven and earth seemed as though it was about to shatter. The starry sky trembled as a terrifying saber chi spread out. The firmament seemed as though it was about to collapse. This was the hegemonic saber technique, a tyrannical saber technique created by Nan Batian. Once the hegemonic saber was unleashed, who could compete with it? This is, Kang-Q was forced to retreat by the saber light. His opponent's hegemonic saber was indeed domineering, causing him to be flustered. However, Kang-Q used to be an extreme-grade supreme martial artist. He had extremely rich battle experience, and his control of power was even at the level of purity of furnace fire. This was the essential difference between a former supreme martial artist and a regular quasi-supreme martial artist. It was also the reason why Kang-Q and the others could suppress a quasi-supreme martial artist. Kang-Q, you are only SOSO. Nan Batian shouted as he attacked. Swoosh. Another sword wound appeared on Nan Batian's body. However, in the next moment, the sword wound disappeared as though he was never injured. At this moment, Nan Batian rarely defended and was almost completely on the offensive. Because he had the invincible tyrant body, he did not need to worry that Kang-Q's sword chi could hurt him. Seeing this scene, Kang-Q was shocked. He did not have such ability, but he had the extreme grade Dao body. However, even so, he would be injured if he was hit by Nan Batian's divine saber. Because the divine saber in Nan Batian's hand was actually an extreme grade Dao artifact. I don't believe that your invincible tyrant body is really indestructible. Kang-Q went all out and directly used a secret art. His sword light was imbued with a power that could destroy the primordial spirit. This secret art was similar to Ji Yu Fei's primordial spirit Dao sword secret art. This was the secret art of the chaotic Golden Rock race, Golden Rock God slaying art. The Golden Rock God slaying art did not slash the divine body, but the primordial spirit. The cultivator who was slashed by the Golden Rock God slaying art would not be injured at all, but the primordial spirit would be destroyed. This was a secret art that targeted the primordial spirit. Kang-Q used the Golden Rock's extreme speed to dodge Nan Batian's saber light. At the same time, his sword light slashed at Nan Batian's body. This time, there was no sword mark on Nan Batian's body. It was as though the shadow of the sword light passed through his body and did not cause any external injuries. At this moment, Kang-Q was inexplicably shocked. Nan Batian did not feel any discomfort at all. It was as though his Golden Rock God slaying art was useless against this guy. How is this possible? Kang-Q could not help but be shocked. Haha, you want to break my undying tyrant body? Dream on. Nan Batian laughed and said. Then, he slashed at Kang-Q again. Kang-Q's expression was incomparably solemn. He dodged Nan Batian's slash. The Golden Rock's extreme speed could be said to be the fastest in the world. If Nan Batian wanted to hit Kang-Q, it would be extraordinarily difficult. Kang-Q began to move around. He would not fight Nan Batian head-on. One had to know that Nan Baishan's tyrant blade was incomparably domineering. A head-on clash would be disadvantageous to him. Shadows flashed across the starry sky, and Kang Q's afterimages were everywhere. This kind of movement art was not inferior to Gu Fei's 8 Desolation Steps. Of course, this was only in terms of speed. The 8 Desolation Steps did not only have 8 steps of extreme speed. Innumerable sword lights surrounded Nan Batian. Innumerable sword lights slashed at his body, but they couldn't hurt him at all. Seeing this scene, the super-old fogies of the Middle Continent who were watching from afar were also stunned. Could this be the legendary Undying Tyrant body? One of the super-old fogies' voice was trembling. The Undying Tyrant body was definitely a terrifying constitution. Those who possessed it could be said to be invincible among their peers. At this time, Kang Q's forehead was dripping with sweat. Chapter 3620. The Undying Tyrant physique was one of the strongest divine physiques in the ancestral god realm, but such a heaven-defying physique had not appeared for a long time. No one would have thought that Nan Batian had actually cultivated the legendary Undying Tyrant body. This was something that no one had ever thought of. In fact, Nan Batian was also taking a risk. No one knew that he had almost died in the battle with the city lord of Nantian City. If he had not prepared a backup plan, he might have really been dragged along with the city lord of Nantian City. He sealed himself in a sarcophagus that had once buried the Undying Tyrant physique. The sarcophagus was stained with the blood essence of the Undying Tyrant physique. This sarcophagus had devoured many experts of the divine race. Anyone who obtained this sarcophagus would not have a good ending. This sarcophagus could be said to be full of demonic nature. But this time, Nan Batian put himself in a desperate situation. He didn't expect to successfully fuse with the blood essence of the Undying Tyrant physique and successfully cultivate the Undying Tyrant physique. At this time, the terror and power of the Undying Tyrant physique was displayed in front of Kang Q. Endless sword light rushed out of Kang Q's body and turned into a sword cocoon that completely engulfed Nan Batian. However, Kang Q was not happy. Countless sword lights pierced through Nan Baishan's body, but he was not hurt at all. Even the Golden Rock God Slayer art is useless. Kang Q couldn't help but be moved. Haha, Kang Q, you can't do it anymore. This is no longer your era. You can go on your way now. Nan Batian laughed wantonly. I've cultivated the Undying Tyrant physique. No one in this world can kill me. The ruler of the ancestral god realm is destined to be me. At this time, Nan Batian was extremely arrogant. At this moment, he really felt that he was invincible. You want to kill me? Fat. Kang Q was shocked and angry. He attacked with all his strength. A chaotic golden rock shadow rushed out of his body and instantly pounced forward. It pierced through the sword cocoon and pounced on Nan Batian. Boom. The chaotic golden rock shadow directly exploded. The destructive power was like the eruption of 100,000 volcanoes, destroying everything. Even Nan Baishan's Undying Tyrant physique was torn to pieces. TCH, I was wondering how powerful the Undying Tyrant body was. It turns out that it's just SOSO. Kang Q looked at the exploding sword cocoon and Nan Batian, who had been burned to ashes by the golden flames of the way, with some disdain. However, he did not dare to be negligent. After all, it was because he was too careless that he was trapped in the mountain river diagram for countless years. Carelessness would bring misfortune. This was the lesson that Kang Q had learned. Ha ha ha. Just then, a tyrannical laughter rang through the sky. Then, a tyrannical figure appeared in the sky. This person was Nan Batian. What? When Kang Q saw this, he felt a sense of helplessness in his heart. What kind of enemy was terrifying? An enemy that couldn't be killed was the most terrifying. Kill. Nan Batian could not be bothered to waste his breath. He stretched out his hand and grabbed at Kang Q. A black hole appeared in his palm and the nearby stars were actually swallowed into the black hole in his palm. Kang Q felt his body tighten, and in the next moment, he flew towards his opponent's hand involuntarily. Boom. In the next moment, Kang Q's body exploded with an unprecedented power wave. His body shook, and a chaotic golden rock that was bigger than a mountain appeared between the sky and the earth. Rumble. This chaotic golden rock flapped its wings and tore the sky apart. It broke through the sky and the devouring power, and then it pounced towards Nanbatian. This time, it was no longer an illusion of the chaotic golden rock, but its real body. Kanku was forced to reveal his original form. A chaotic flame of the way erupted from the chaotic golden rock's body and instantly enveloped the entire starry sky. In the chaotic flame of the way, the void was constantly being destroyed. Many stars were also enveloped by the flame of the way and exploded, and then they were burned to ashes. What's happening? At this moment, countless people and living beings in the central continent looked up at the starry sky in the sky. In the starry sky, there was a monstrous flame. The entire starry sky looked like it was about to be engulfed by the exploding flame. It was terrifying. The experts of the central continent were also shocked to see this scene. Kanku, that guy. On a mountain outside the central continent's eastern sky city, an old man who was sitting cross-legged on a boulder suddenly looked up at the sky. 2 rays of divine light shot out from his eyes. This old man was the Eastern Pole Old Ancestor. He had also come to the central continent to continue his role as a peacemaker. However, he realized that no one was willing to listen to his long-winded words. He had come to Eastern Sky City to find Gu Fei's doppelganger. The great calamity is coming, but the ancestral god realm is still in chaos. Sigh. The Eastern Pole Old Ancestor let out a long sigh and shook his head. He had a helpless expression on his face. However, the Eastern Pole Old Ancestor did not give up. He could not find Gu Fei's real body, but he could find Gu Fei's doppelganger. To a certain extent, this was no different from finding Gu Fei's real body. At this moment, the scene of the starry sky burning in the starry sky could be seen everywhere in the central continent of the ancestral god realm. This scene was too shocking. Kanku also went all out. This Nanbatian was really too strong. The undying tyrant body seemed to be really undying. It was even more abnormal than a cockroach that could not be killed. There's no need to go all out, right? In a secluded courtyard in the Eastern Sky City's City Lord's residence, Gu Fei's doppelganger raised his head and saw this scene. However, he smiled and did not say anything. At this time, he threw his new disciple into his inner world to train. This Shimonjian was born to be a genius in the way of the sword. After Gu Fei's doppelganger taught him the 9 heaven punishing swords, he actually mastered the first sword in just a few days. The 9 heaven punishing swords was the extreme way of the sword created by the sword slave. There were a total of 9 swords. Back then, the Heaven Realm's East Sky Emperor Yuan Jiyu only learned a little bit of it and was almost invincible in the entire Heaven Realm. And the true power of the 9 heaven punishing swords was naturally many times stronger than the flying immortal swordway that the Heaven Realm's East Sky Emperor Yuan Jiyu had comprehended the 9 heaven punishing swords. However, each sword of the 9 heaven punishing swords was harder to master than the previous one. Even Gu Fei had to cultivate for a long time before he could master the 9 heaven punishing swords. At this time, the sword slave had nothing to do but watch the battle in the starry sky. He would not make a move. Even if Kanku was really killed by Nanbatian, he would not make a move. The world of cultivation had always been a world where the strong preyed on the weak. This world was too cruel. The strong survived and the weak died. This was a law that would not change for thousands of years. This was a law that applied to all perfect worlds. Rumble. At this time, in the starry sky, there were sounds of wind and thunder coming from the endless flames of the way. Then, the chaos flames of the way that had almost enveloped the entire star field retreated like the tide. The endless chaos flames of the way were continuously devoured by a domineering figure. The endless chaos flames of the way were frantically gathering towards this figure. In less than a dozen breaths, the chaos flames of the way in the starry sky were completely devoured by this figure. That figure punched out and actually sent the chaos golden rock that Kanku had transformed into flying. Golden chaotic blood dripped from the sky. Haha, this feels great. Nanbatian roared somewhat crazily. The feeling of being filled with power made him extremely excited. Then, he became even more arrogant. Kanku, I will give you a chance. As long as you are willing to submit to me, I will spare your life. Nan Baishan's voice came down from the starry sky. A small half of the living beings in the central continent heard his extremely arrogant voice. What? Kang-Q was defeated. All the experts in the central continent were indescribably shocked. One had to know that Kang-Q had annihilated the Pang clan. Such a powerful existence had actually been defeated by Nan Batian. The chaos golden rock that Kang-Q had transformed into disappeared. He had transformed back into his human form, but the pair of golden wings on his back had not been kept. The golden wings were surrounded by the chaos metal elemental essence chi. Every strand of the chaos metal elemental essence chi seemed to be able to crush countless mountains. You want me to submit? It seems like you will be disappointed. I will not submit to anyone. Kang-Q said disdainfully. It was impossible for him to submit. Then you can go and die. Nan Batian kept his smile and took a step forward. In an instant, he appeared in front of Kang-Q and threw a simple and direct punch at Kang-Q. It was such an ordinary punch. It looked like a casual punch, but it gave Kang-Q a feeling that he didn't know how to dodge it. This was the embodiment of Tao. Simple, direct, and yet invincible. Nan Baishan's Tao was tyrannical and invincible. His punch looked like it was casually thrown out, but the power contained within it was unimaginable. Without any suspense, a cloud of blood mist appeared. Kang-Q was actually smashed into a cloud of blood mist by Nan Baishan's punch. Seeing this scene, the spectators who were watching from afar were immediately stunned. To be more precise, they were dumbfounded. Only the sword slave was still as calm as before. It seemed like there was nothing in this world that could move him. Kang-Q wasn't that easy to be beaten to death. That cloud of blood radiated with boundless divine light, and a powerful figure appeared within the divine light. Fellow Daoist, please lend me a hand. The divine light dissipated and Kang-Q's figure appeared in the void. He transmitted his voice to the sword slave. He already knew that the sword slave was watching the show from the side, but the sword slave refused to help him. The sword slave and the demon god were helpers that he invited from Gu Fei's clone. Haha, what's the matter? You can't win and you're looking for help. Go ahead and find someone. Come at me together, and I will send you all on your way. Nan Batian looked at Kang-Q in disdain and said arrogantly. He had already become so arrogant that he didn't put anyone in his eyes. It was as if he was the most powerful person in the world. Chapter 36-21. In the starry sky of the central continent, the battle between Kang-Q and Nan Batian was about to end. Nan Batian had the absolute upper hand. However, Kang-Q was once an extreme-grade supreme being. Although Nan Batian had the upper hand, it wasn't an easy task to defeat Kang-Q. At this time, the East Continent's Protoss army was still pursuing the South Continent's Protoss army. Attack! Furious roars filled with murderous intent rang out from the celestial army of the East Continent. Countless celestial warriors brandished their spears at the same time. The sound of breaking through the air suddenly rang out. The battle spears that flew out from the East Continent Protoss army instantly turned into countless divine lights that soared into the sky. Then, they fell on the South Continent Protoss army. Defend! An angry roar came from the South Continent's celestial races' battle formation. Countless celestial races' soldiers raised their divine shields at the same time. Dense sounds of metal clashing rang out as countless divine lights rained down. Most of them were blocked by the divine shields in the hands of the South Continent's warriors, but some of the weaker areas were directly pierced by the battle spears. Screams rang out, and many more South Continent soldiers were nailed to death by the spears in the void, and then directly fell from the sky. The soldiers of the South Continent had fled all the way here, leaving behind many corpses. The experts of the South Continent were both shocked and furious. If this continued, they would be killed by those fellows from the East Continent sooner or later. Rumble. The South Continent's battle formation continued to flee, but it was constantly changing. A powerful power of the divine Tao erupted from the South Continent's battle formation, and the void began to warp and distort as if the entire battle formation was about to escape into the void. Trying to escape. The first primogenitor of the Earth Spirit clan couldn't remain calm when he saw this. If he let these fellows escape from his hands, how embarrassing would that be? Boom. In the next moment, the first ancestor of the land spirit charged out of the battle formation and instantly appeared in the sky above the South Continent battle formation. In order to catch up with the South Continent's battle formation, the first Earth Spirit ancestor did not hesitate to use the secret technique of the Earth Spirit tribe. A powerful divine power rippled from the first Earth Spirit tribe's body. The entire void shook from the impact of this power. What? Within the South Continent's battle formation, the group of South Continent experts were stunned. The first ancestor of the land spirit had actually chased after them alone. Kill. An angry roar came from the South Continent's battle formation. Then, a ball of divine fire rushed out from the South Continent's battle formation and blasted towards the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit in the sky. TCH, I don't want to play with you guys anymore. The first ancestor of the Earth Spirit laughed coldly and stomped down. Rumble. The space beneath the first Earth Spirit ancestor's feet shook violently. With a boom, the first Earth Spirit ancestor stomped on the ball of divine fire and blew it apart. In the next moment, the first ancestor's foot turned into the size of a mountain and stepped on the South Continent's battle formation. Boom. With a loud bang, the first ancestor of the land spirit stepped on the South Continent's battle formation. In the next moment, screams rang out. Countless South Continent soldiers were instantly turned into a mist of blood, their bodies and souls destroyed. The Southern Continent's experts were stunned by this scene. No one expected the first ancestor to use such a simple and direct attack to break the Southern Continent's battle formation. Boom. Another loud sound rang out as the first ancestor of the land spirit stomped down again. Without any suspense, another large group of South Continent soldiers was crushed by his stomp. The first Earth Spirit ancestor had once been an extreme Dao paragon. His cultivation wasn't any weaker than the sword slaves. It was fine if he didn't attack, but once he did, it would definitely shake heaven and earth. Fight him to the death. The South Continent's experts knew that if they didn't, they would all be killed by the first Earth Spirit ancestor. Fight. Fight. At most, we'll just die. The South Continent's experts all unleashed their power. Powerful divine power ripples exploded from the South Continent's battle formation. Over a dozen of them actually appeared at the same time. Boom. Amidst the deafening rumble, the entire void exploded, and the chaotic energy was sent flying out. All the South Continent's divine rank soldiers seemed to be enveloped in divine fire. They were all burning their divine source to raise their combat power. Countless glowing figures soared into the sky, pouncing at the first Earth Spirit ancestor. At this moment, the first ancestor waved his hand and the glowing figures that were pouncing over exploded in the void. Extinguish. The first Earth Spirit ancestor unleashed a powerful move. A terrifying primal chaos wheel appeared in the sky and smashed downwards. Its destructive power was terrifying. The primal chaos wheel instantly enveloped the entire sky. Without any suspense, the figures directly collapsed into clouds of blood mist under the chaotic wheel, and even the South Continent's warlords died. The other East Continent's experts were all dumbfounded. If the first Earth Spirit ancestor was so powerful, why didn't he attack just now? The leader of the Earth Spirit clan hid his strength really deeply. The Celestial God clan lord's expression was incomparably grave. The first Earth Spirit ancestor's cultivation and combat power were comparable to the sword slaves. As a result, the South Continent soldiers were unlucky. The first Earth Spirit ancestor's primal chaos wheel erupted with a heaven-devouring power, swallowing countless South Continent soldiers into the primal chaos wheel. Shrill screams rang out, and it was terrifying to the extreme. Nearly 100,000 South Continent soldiers were swallowed by the first Earth Spirit ancestor's primal chaos wheel. No one could escape. Awesome. The Black Snake clan lord couldn't help but exclaim. Hihi, of course. If our leader isn't awesome, who is? The second Earth Spirit ancestor said proudly. Their big brother's cultivation and combat power were among the best in the entire East Continent. Other than Jiu Fei, they had never truly submitted to anyone. The South Continent's God Race army was eliminated by the first Earth Spirit ancestor just like that. The first Earth Spirit ancestor had actually kept a low profile. At this time, the sword slave in the starry sky suddenly looked down. His gaze seemed to ignore distance and space, as if he was looking at the first Earth Spirit ancestor. The first Earth Spirit ancestor seemed to have the courage to look up at the starry sky. Although they were separated by a long distance, the two experts could sense each other, and a strong battle intent surged from their bodies. However, they had no intention of making a move. The South Continent's God Race army is finished. Seeing this scene, those forces that were watching from the sidelines in the Central Continent all wanted to seek refuge with Kang-Q. These forces were all fence-sitters. They would seek refuge with whoever was stronger. The great pursuit on the ground finally ended. The South Continent's God Race army that attacked the Central Continent ended with the annihilation of the South Continent soldiers. Raw. Sensing all this, Nan Batian was finally enraged. He attacked Kang-Q with all his might, constantly forcing Kang-Q to retreat. Bang! A muffled sound of collision resounded. Kang-Q felt pain in his body, and then his entire body was blasted into the air. He smashed through a star. Boom! The entire starry sky seemed like it was going to explode. It was extremely terrifying. At this time, another figure suddenly appeared in the starry sky. This figure was the first Earth Spirit ancestor who had just annihilated the South Continent soldiers. You deserve to die. Nan Batian roared and attacked the first Earth Spirit ancestor with a ferocious expression. I wonder if it will be you or me who will die. The first Earth Spirit ancestor stared at Nan Batian in disdain and said coldly, "Die for me." The first Earth Spirit ancestor stretched out his right hand, and a black vortex immediately appeared in his palm. A heaven-devouring power surged out from the vortex and enveloped Nan Batian. Nan Batian flew towards the first Earth Spirit ancestor involuntarily. Be careful, he has cultivated the undying tyrant body. Kang-Q hurriedly transmitted a message to the first Earth Spirit ancestor. Undying tyrant body. When the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit tribe heard this, he couldn't help but be startled. Could it be that Nan Batian had also embarked on the path of becoming a saint with his physical body? Ha ha. Nan Batian suddenly laughed and his body shook. An unimaginably domineering power exploded from his body. In the next moment, the devouring power that enveloped his body was broken by him. How is this possible? The first progenitor of the land spirit was dumbfounded. At this moment, a fist enlarged in front of his eyes. He tilted his head and dodged the fist. Then, his right leg kicked towards Nan Batian like a divine whip. Nan Batian did not dodge and allowed the first Earth Spirit ancestor's kick to land on his body. He reached out with his right hand and grabbed the first Earth Spirit ancestor's right leg. Then, he moved the wheel of life. This Nan Batian was too ferocious. Buzz! A sword chimed and an immortal sword light fell from the sky, chopping off the first Earth Spirit ancestor's right arm. However, the right arm that had been chopped off from Nan Batian's body disappeared into the void before it landed on the ground. In the next moment, a new arm grew out from his body, as if it had never been injured in the first place. Bang! The first Earth Spirit ancestor took the opportunity to fiercely slap Nan Batian's body. However, in the next moment, he was dumbfounded. Nan Batian's divine body seemed to be indestructible. The violent slap did not kill Nan Batian. It was as if nothing happened to him. Nan Batian fought against two super experts with ease. This caused everyone who saw this scene to be inexplicably shocked. This Nan Batian was actually powerful to such an extent. Chapter 36-22. In the starry sky of the Central Continent, Kang-Q and the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit worked together to fight against Nan Batian. The three figures moved quickly in the starry sky. Everywhere they passed, stars exploded in the void. The destructive power they displayed was extremely terrifying. Buzz! The divine sword in Kang-Q's hand kept buzzing. The god inside the divine sword seemed to be awakening from a deep sleep. The sword aura it emitted caused the temperature of the void to drop rapidly. The divine sword in Kang-Q's hand shook. 9 rays of immortal sword light flew out from his hand and flew towards Nan Batian. Nan Batian laughed. Then, he opened his mouth and inhaled. He actually swallowed the 9 rays of sword light. What? When Kang Q saw this scene, he could not help being taken aback. Just as Kang Q was shocked, Nan Batian spat out 9 rays of immortal sword light towards the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit. The first ancestor of the Earth Spirit sneered. He raised his right hand, and the chaotic wheel immediately blocked in front of him. It blocked the 9 rays of sword light. The chaotic divine wheel was filled with chaotic chi. Not only did it block the 9 rays of sword light, but it also swallowed the 9 rays of sword light in the next moment. Buzz! The chaotic divine wheel was shaking. Ancient chaotic divine patterns appeared and intertwined on the divine wheel. A wave of power that was extremely close to the power of the extreme great path exploded from the divine wheel. Hey! Nan Baishan's eyes brightened when he saw this. This Dao tool was not bad. It could actually swallow the opponent's attack. I want this. Nan Batian shouted. He stretched out his right hand and grabbed at the chaotic divine wheel in front of the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit. He completely ignored the powerful chaotic power that exploded from the chaotic divine wheel. I want your life. The first ancestor of the Earth Spirit roared. At the same time, endless chaotic chi exploded from the chaotic divine wheel. The chaotic divine wheel instantly became as huge as a mountain. Then, it rushed towards Nan Batian. Rumble. Everywhere the chaotic divine wheel passed, the void was instantly destroyed. Nothing was left. Everything was turned into nothingness. Endless chaotic divine light illuminated the entire star region. Nan Baishan's hand continued to reach for the chaotic divine wheel. Just as Nan Baishan's right hand grabbed onto the chaotic divine wheel, a heaven-devouring force suddenly erupted from the chaotic divine wheel and firmly sucked Nan Baishan's right hand in. In the next moment, Nan Batian felt as if his own spiritual essence was like a broken dam. It flowed for 1,000 miles and was forcefully devoured by the chaotic divine wheel. This, Nan Baishan's shock was no small matter. At this time, Kang Q wielded the divine sword of extreme Dao and charged over aggressively. This made him even more shocked and anxious. Although he had cultivated the undying tyrant body, he would still die if his spirit, essence, and spirit were to be devoured by the chaotic divine wheel. The undying tyrant body was not without flaws, but no one could see through it. Damn it! Nan Batian roared angrily. He immediately chopped off his right hand, which was stuck to the chaotic divine wheel. In the next moment, his right hand, which was still stuck to the chaotic divine wheel, immediately shriveled up. Clang! Nan Batian directly chopped the chaotic divine wheel with his sword. The overbearing power of the sword way directly shook off the chaotic divine wheel. However, in the next moment, the divine sword of extreme Dao in Kang Q's hand directly pierced through his divine body. The tip of the sword pierced through his chest. Roar! Nan Batian roared angrily at the sky. Then, his undying tyrant body actually disappeared in the void. In the next moment, a figure directly appeared behind Kang Q. Swoosh. An overbearing sword light flashed in the void, and Kang Q's head flew up. At the same time, the chaotic divine wheel of the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit appeared above the figure's head and directly obliterated it. The figure once again collapsed and turned into a mist of blood. However, a scene that shocked the sword slave happened. The figure appeared in the void again. That person was Nan Batian. At this time, Nan Batian was unscathed. His right hand was not chopped off. Nan Baishan's battle intent surged, and the power that erupted from the undying tyrant body became even stronger. Meanwhile, Kang Q's head also flew back to his body and reconnected with his divine body. His battle strength was not affected at all. The shadow of a huge chaotic golden rock appeared on Kang Q's body from time to time. At their level of cultivation, ordinary attacks would not be able to threaten their lives. If they wanted to kill existences of this level, they would need to use special methods. The 3 experts fought wildly. Even the divine body of the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit was destroyed by Nan Batian several times. However, what made Kang Q and the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit feel incredulous was that Nan Baishan's undying tyrant body seemed to become stronger as the battle went on, while they became weaker and weaker. The so-called undying tyrant body can actually devour the power of others. The sword slave who was watching the battle from the starry sky stared at Nan Batian and muttered to himself. There was no longer any suspense in the outcome of the battle. Nan Batian would definitely kill Kanku and the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit at the end of the battle. If that was the case, it would not be a good thing for the sword slave. He could not disobey Jiu Fei's orders. If Kanku and the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit were to die, Jiu Fei would be very unhappy. Then, the outcome would be unpredictable. Are you still watching the show? The demon god also appeared in the starry sky and came to the sword slave's side. Old ancestor Luo Xiao's figure also appeared. They were all Jiu Fei's men. To a certain extent, they were fighting for Jiu Fei. The undying tyrant body is indeed powerful. Old ancestor Luo Xiao said in surprise. He, I wonder how many strikes this guy can take from Brother Jian. The demon god looked at the domineering figure that suppressed Kanku and the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit to the point where they could not fight back. His eyes flickered. All right, I've had enough fun. I'll send you on your way. Nan Batian spoke in an incomparably domineering manner. After that, the space around him began to distort as a heaven-devouring force erupted from his body. In the next moment, the void around Kanku and the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit collapsed instantly. Both of them flew towards Nan Batian uncontrollably. Ha. Nan Batian laughed crazily. It's your honor to become a part of my body. Nan Batian's undying tyrant body was like a black hole that could devour the universe. Everything around him was devoured into his body and turned into a part of his strength. What? Everyone was shocked when they heard Nan Batian's words. The undying tyrant body could devour other cultivators' energy and essence to turn into his own. No wonder this guy was getting stronger as he fought. Kanku and the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit were shocked to the extreme. They tried their best to break free from the devouring force that enveloped them. However, they realized that their opponent's strength was too strong and they could not break free. Just as Kanku and the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit were about to be devoured by Nan Batian, a sword light suddenly descended from the sky and broke through the devouring force from Nan Batian's undying tyrant body. The sword slashed Nan Batian's body. This sword light was as powerful as breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, and it actually directly split Nan Batian into two halves. Roar. Nan Batian roared crazily as a powerful divine power burst out from his body. The two halves of his divine body merged back together. A ball of divine light emerged and Nan Batian's undying tyrant body appeared in front of everyone again. At this moment, Kanku and the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit seized the opportunity to break free from Nan Batian's devouring force. Kill. Nan Batian charged towards the sword slave. However, in the next moment, another sword light flashed across the sky. In the next moment, Nan Batian's head flew up, but there was no blood splattering. In the next moment, Nan Batian's head and body were reconnected. Although his undying tyrant body was attacked, his origin was not hurt at all. Good fella. At this moment, even the sword slave was shocked. Nan Batian's undying tyrant body was indeed something. Even his second sword could not hurt this guy. The sword slave's heaven-punishing 9 swords was a killing technique. It was said that once the 9 swords were unleashed, heaven and earth would be destroyed. However, the sword slave had already unleashed the second sword. When Kanku and the others saw this scene, they could not help but feel nervous. If even the sword slave could not kill Nan Batian, then they only had one choice: to escape. At this moment, the sword slave roared and unleashed the third sword of the heaven-punishing 9 swords. An extremely terrifying killing aura exploded from his body. In the next moment, Nan Batian's undying tyrant body was slashed into thousands of pieces by countless immortal sword lights. However, Nan Batian still did not die. The sword slave's killing sword still could not hurt him. When Nan Batian's figure appeared again, Kanku and the others were dumbfounded. Was this Nan Batian really unkillable? Someone said in disbelief. Unkillable. The sword slave did not believe in this. One should know that there was no unkillable person in this world. No matter how powerful the person was, there would be a day when he or she would fall. After devouring you, my combat strength will definitely rise to a new level. Nan Batian looked at the sword slave and his eyes instantly lit up. "Haha, then you can give it a try." The sword slave laughed as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. In the next moment, Nan Batian's figure disappeared in the void. The void around the sword slave collapsed without any signs. The sword slave lost control of his body and was directly devoured by the black hole that appeared in the void. Seeing this scene, Kang Q, the first progenitor of the land spirit, and the other experts were stunned. Chapter 36-23. Reeks. In the starry sky of the central continent, the final battle between the East Continent and the South Continent was taking place. Who would become the true overlord of the central continent would depend on the outcome of this battle. Other than Kang Q and the others who were extremely nervous, the experts of the various forces of the central continent were also watching this battle. Because after this battle, the various forces of the central continent would know who to follow. The forces of the central continent were fence-sitters, and they knew the importance of choosing a side. Once they chose the wrong side, the consequences would be the annihilation of their entire clan. Even if their clan wasn't annihilated, they would still be punished and enslaved. This was a very common phenomenon in the entire ancestral god realm. One must know that after thoroughly defeating an enemy, there was no need to kill them all. After all, defeated enemies were also a kind of resource. Of course, the enemies who fought with their lives were an exception. At this moment, the sword slave had already made his move and displayed the third sword of the 9 heaven punishing swords. However, the sword slave still couldn't kill Nan Batian. Nan Batian's undying tyrant body was indeed amazing. Kang Q and the first progenitor of the earth spirit had to admit that the first progenitor's state was actually similar to the undying tyrant body. Although the undying tyrant body was known to be undying, there was still a limit to it. One should know that even the supreme martial artists would perish, let alone the undying tyrant body. Rumble. The entire void was shaking, and the void around the sword slave suddenly collapsed, swallowing him into the primal chaos. Seeing this scene, Kang Q and the first progenitor of the earth spirit's palms were sweating. They had just experienced the power of the undying tyrant body. This was the most powerful enemy they had ever met. Even when they attacked the Pang clan's ancestral land, they didn't meet such a powerful opponent. However, just when everyone was inexplicably shocked, an immortal sword light suddenly slashed out from the primal chaos, and a figure walked out from the primal chaos. "Trying to beat me into the depths of the primal chaos?" The sword slave's voice was extremely cold and emotionless. He was like a heavenly sword that instantly rushed out from the primal chaos. Behind him, a large piece of the void was collapsing. In the collapsing void, a huge black shadow appeared. A pitch-black hand reached out from the depths of the primal chaos and grabbed the sword slave. What? Everyone was shocked when they saw the huge hand that stretched out from the depths of the primal chaos actually directly grabbed the sword slave and dragged it into the depths of the primal chaos. Hehe, even though I've killed you, I'm going to suppress you deep within the primal chaos for billions of years. Nan Batian's voice came directly from the depths of the primal chaos. This fellow. Kang Q and the others were shocked and furious. You! The sword servant's voice resounded right after that, and then 9 rays of eternal light erupted from the black figure's fist, causing his entire arm to be obliterated by the rays of light that erupted from his fist. If I don't show my might, do you think I'm a sick cat? The sword slave rushed out and said disdainfully. You. At this time, Nan Batian couldn't help but be moved. This guy actually didn't go all out when he fought with him just now. He even held back. 9 swords at the same time, unparalleled under the heavens. The sword slave roared furiously. 9 rays of sword light revolved around him. These 9 rays of sword light directly broke through the chaos and slashed towards the figure in the depths of the chaos. Without any suspense, the 9 sword lights instantly destroyed the huge black shadow in the depths of the chaos. Boom! The moment the black shadow was destroyed, the 9 rays of sword light were simultaneously repelled by a sudden burst of tyrannical energy. You're not the only one who knows how to play with the sword. Nan Batian roared furiously. An extremely overbearing sword light directly slashed out from the depths of the chaos, and within the sword light, a figure could actually be vaguely seen. One with the sword. Seeing this, the sword slave had no choice but to get serious. This fellow's sword Dao cultivation was still passable. Of course, this one with the sword-killing move wasn't too abnormal. With the sword slave's sword Dao cultivation, one with the sword was just a child's play. When I was playing with the sword, who knows where you were playing with the mud? The sword slave waved his hand, and the 9 rays of sword light that were repelled immediately flew back. Then, the 9 swords merged into one and stabbed forward. Clang! The tip of the sword slave's divine sword directly collided with Nan Baishan's one with the sword, and a ball of resplendent sword light burst out. Rays of sword light flew out in all directions, slicing through the chaos and destroying everything. The sword slave's sword light blocked Nan Baishan's one with the sword. Kill! The sword slave let out an angry roar, and the power of the sword light in his hand increased exponentially. In the next moment, Nan Batian, who was one with the sword, was met with tragedy. The giant sword light immediately collapsed. When the sword light collapsed, Nan Batian, who was one with the sword, naturally collapsed as well. The destructive sword light dissipated in the void. However, Nan Batian cultivated the undying tyrant body. Although his divine body was shattered into countless pieces, he still didn't die. Rays of divine light rushed over from all directions and gathered together. An extremely domineering figure appeared in the chaos once again. When the sword slave saw this, his expression was still calm like an ancient well without any ripples. The stronger the opponent, the more potential it could stimulate. Buzz! The sword Dao power that burst out from the sword slave's body was even stronger, and there was a faint sword cry coming from his body. It was as if he had turned into the ancestor of all swords. At this moment, in the starry sky outside of the chaos, the sword on Kang Q's body was actually vibrating, as if it would fly out from his body at any time. What's going on? Kang Q was inexplicably shocked. However, at this moment, a scene that made Kang Q and the others dumbfounded appeared. In the surrounding starry sky, there was actually the sound of countless swords being unsheathed. Then, countless sword lights flew over from all directions. Aya, my sword! In the distant sky, a middle-aged sword cultivator directly unsheathed a divine sword on his back, and it instantly turned into a ray of divine light and flew forward. The legendary Myriad Sword Greeting! Someone exclaimed. Myriad Sword Greeting was definitely the supreme sword Dao divine ability in the hearts of sword cultivators. Once the Myriad Sword Greeting was used, all swords would submit, and it could make all sword cultivators despair. At this moment, even Nan Batian himself was extremely shocked. His sword Dao power seemed to be out of his control, and the divine sword on his body was shaking violently, wanting to fly out. If it wasn't for him suppressing the sword on his body, this sword that was infinitely close to an extreme divine artifact would really fly out from his body. Myriad Sword Greeting. Chapter 36-24. At this time, an incomparably shocking scene appeared in the starry sky. Countless sword lights flew in one direction. Even on the land of the central continent, countless sword lights soared into the sky and flew towards the starry sky. What's going on? On a mountain in the central part of the central continent, an old man sitting on a boulder opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was countless sword lights flying out of a valley in front of him. Sword Valley. The old man was shocked when he saw this. He quickly stood up from the rock and disappeared into the void with a sway of his body. At this moment, the entire Sword Valley was shaking. It was a mess inside. The disciples of Sword Valley were all scared silly. How many years had it been since something like this had happened in Sword Valley? Is the sword ancestor coming into being? In the depths of the Sword Valley was a sword tomb. To be more precise, there was a small mountain made up of all kinds of swords. It was unknown how many swords had been thrown into the sword tomb. On the short mountain of the sword catacomb, there was a black figure sitting cross-legged. This was also an old man. He had been in seclusion in this sword tomb for countless years. At this moment, he opened his eyes and 2 resplendent sword lights shot out. The sword lights pierced through the void. At this time, the small mountain under the old man's but shook as if something was about to charge out. A powerful sword chi fluctuation enveloped the entire sword tomb. Ancestor Jian Yi. The Sword Valley's disciples looked in the direction of the sword tomb in horror. Boom! Right at this moment, a loud bang resounded, and the entire sword tomb actually exploded. After that, a wave of sword energy that caused everyone to feel despair swept out from the sword tomb. Countless swords flew in all directions. Some unlucky Sword Valley's disciples were directly pierced by the swords and died. In the next moment, all the swords on the Sword Dao cultivators in the Sword Valley flew out and gathered towards a black sword that had rushed out of the sword tomb. Those sword lights were all devoured by the black sword. The heaven-devouring sword has come into being. At this time, the white-robed old man appeared in the sky above the Sword Valley. A black shadow rushed out of the sword catacomb and grabbed the black sword in the air that was emitting the power of devouring the heavens. This was a ferocious sword that could devour all swords in the world. The heaven-devouring sword was a legend in the entire ancestral god realm. No one knew that this peerless ominous sword was actually suppressed in the central continent's Sword Valley. This peerless ominous sword had always been in a deep slumber, but at this moment, the supreme sword Dao aura of 10,000 swords actually descended from the starry sky. However, the supreme sword aura of the myriad swords greeting had alarmed the sleeping heaven-devouring sword in the sword tomb. The heaven-devouring sword was the second sword in the ancestral god realm. Because the number one divine artifact in the ancestral god realm was the myriad god ancestral sword, the heaven-devouring sword could only be ranked second. The myriad god ancestral sword was in the hands of Jiu Fei, and the heaven-devouring sword was born. Roar! The old man holding the black sword roared towards the sky, and a terrifying sound wave spread out. More than half of the disciples in the Sword Valley immediately exploded and died. Martial ancestor Zhen Yi, Yu, the Sword Valley master, was about to go crazy at this moment, and his eyes were bloodshot. Fuck! The disciple that he had painstakingly nurtured was finished just like that. His heart was bleeding. However, he didn't dare to curse out loud. Right now, the Sword Valley master was really angry, anxious, and sullen. However, the moment the black-robed old man held the black sword, he fell into a state of madness. He glared at the Sword Valley master, and two extremely sharp sword lights shot out from his eyes, instantly piercing through the Sword Valley master's body. What? The Sword Valley master's shock was no small matter. It was already too late for him to dodge. Just as the Sword Valley master was about to die from a glare from martial ancestor Zhen Yi, a large hand suddenly reached out and blocked the two sword lights. The white-robed old man's figure appeared beside the Sword Valley master. Many thanks for Senior's help. The Sword Valley master hurriedly bowed when he saw the old man. He didn't dare to be negligent. Fellow Daoist Zhen Yi, what's wrong? The white-robed old man was frightened. At this moment, martial ancestor Zhen Yi's aura had changed, becoming incomparably ruthless like a terrifying beast. Martial ancestor Zhen Yi ignored the white-robed old man and soared into the sky with the black sword in hand. This is bad. The white-robed old man's expression changed. Martial ancestor Zhen Yi might have already been controlled by the heaven-devouring sword. This was no longer a person controlling the sword, but a person being controlled by the sword. Senior worldly Daoist. The Sword Valley master wanted to stop the white-robed old man. He also wanted to enter the starry sky. But now, Sword Valley was in chaos. Even the sword tomb had been destroyed. Countless disciples had died and many more were injured. As the Sword Valley master, he naturally couldn't leave. Myriad swords greeting, sigh. The Sword Valley master was helpless. Sword Valley once had such a peerless sword master, but that was countless years ago. The Sword Valley had a long history, dating back to before the Great War of Gods and Demons. However, that war affected the entire ancestral god realm and caused great damage to the Sword Valley. During the later stages of the Great War, Sword 4000A Sword Dao ancestor of the valley who had reached the myriad swords greeting realm had perished together with a great devil in a battle. Since then, no one in the Sword Valley had reached the myriad swords greeting realm. Even martial ancestor Zhen Yi's sword Dao had not reached the myriad swords greeting realm. At this moment, a black sword light streaked across the starry sky and slashed in the direction where the sword lights were flying. What? At this time, the sword slave suddenly felt a dangerous aura rapidly approaching him. Myriad swords greeting realm. At this moment, in Dongtian City in the eastern part of the central continent, Ji Yufei's doppelganger also sensed the aura of Sword Wei coming from the starry sky. He directly grabbed Shimon Yijian out of his inner world, then soared into the sky and charged towards the starry sky. At this time, in the sky, where the myriad swords converged, Nan Batian was extremely shocked. He never thought that the other party was actually a sword ancestor. However, just when Nan Batian was in despair, a black sword light descended from the sky and slashed towards the sword slave. What? Seeing this scene, everyone was indescribably shocked. One must know that once the myriad swords greeting realm appeared, all swords would submit to it. Even Kang Q's supreme sword was affected. However, there was actually a sword that was not affected by the myriad swords greeting realm. Moreover, it directly slashed towards the sword slave. Chapter 36-26. The sudden appearance of Sword Valley's founding ancestor One Sword from the central region of the central region shocked many old antiques. One had to know that the founding ancestor had been famous for a long time and was an old antique. However, what happened next left the old-timers in the starry sky flabbergasted. Sword Valley's ancestral master Sword One had actually been grabbed to death. How is this possible? Everyone found it hard to believe, but they had to believe it because they saw founding ancestor One Sword being clawed to death by a mysterious expert. Rumble. At that moment, the void in the depths of the starry sky collapsed and chaotic chi surged. It's you again. A divine will was transmitted from the primal chaos, and a blurry figure appeared indistinctly in the primal chaos, emitting a terrifying and monstrous aura. It's you. Ji Yufei's clone sensed a familiar aura. The person in the chaos was one of the 9 supreme figures that appeared in the sky above the Golden Rock clan's ancestral land in the East Continent. Something big happened in the East Continent when the Pang clan was about to be annihilated. 9 supreme figures broke through the void and came to kill Ji Yufei. However, the ancestral god realm had the power of heavenly punishment. Even the 9 supreme figures didn't dare to come with their real bodies. They only sent their clones. However, in the end, Ji Yufei took out the mountain and river cauldron and absorbed the clones of the 9 great chaotic supremes into the cauldron. No one expected such an ending. This was especially so for the 9 primal chaos sovereigns. They were indescribably shocked. How could this Ji Yufei be so powerful? He could actually take away their clones. Ji Yufei's clone in the central continent was the first to know what happened in the East Continent. That guy from the ancestral god realm. Ji Yufei's clone's expression immediately turned grave. One must know that the fellow in the primal chaos was definitely an extreme-grade sovereign realm sovereign. However, the power of heavenly punishment existed in the ancestral god realm. An extreme supreme wouldn't dare to appear in the ancestral god realm. Ancestral god realm. Hearing the words of Ji Yufei's clone, the monster god, the first ancestor of the earth spirit, and the others were shocked. Even the worldly Daoist ancestor of the central continent was stunned. Only the ancient existences knew what kind of place the primogenitor's realm was. Of course, even the old-timers of the ancestral god realm didn't know much about the ancestral god realm. However, the ancestral god realm was definitely a world much larger than the ancestral god realm. For the experts there were also much stronger than those in the ancestral god realm. However, even in the eyes of these old fogies, the ancestral god realm was nothing more than a legend. Countless years had passed, and no experts from the ancestral god realm had appeared in the ancestral god realm. But now, an expert from the ancestral god realm had actually shattered the void and was about to appear in the ancestral god realm. To the entire ancestral god realm, it was unknown whether this was a good or bad thing. However, the mysterious expert in the primal chaos who was emitting a terrifying aura had no intention of entering the ancestral god realm. Mph, it's just a clone. It dares to fight me over the heaven-devouring sword? A wave of divine will was transmitted from the chaos. What? At this time, the old fogies of the ancestral god realm were stunned. This wasn't Ji Yufei's real body, but a clone? How could this be possible? The battle strength displayed by Ji Yufei's clone was too strong, but this was just a clone. No one could have imagined it. TCH, who do you think you are? Ji Yufei's clone said disdainfully. This guy doesn't even dare to come over. What's there to be afraid of? The primal chaos sovereign of the ancestral god realm was incomparably depressed. If he could go over, he could crush this little guy with a single finger. But the problem was that he couldn't. Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. The figure in the primal chaos said angrily. Then, the figure completely disappeared into the primal chaos. In the next moment, a figure directly walked out from the primal chaos. It was a white-robed young man. He had long blood-colored hair and there was a god's eye between his eyebrows. Mu Kang, kill him for me. The primal chaos sovereign's divine will came from the primal chaos. Yes, ancestor. The crimson-haired young man called Mu Kang said loudly. Then, he walked directly towards Ji Yufei's clone. With every step he took, his aura rose by a large margin. After taking 9 steps, the blood-haired youth's aura instantly soared to the limit, causing the starry sky around him to tremble. The surrounding stars were shaking as though they would fall from the sky at any moment. The old fogies nearby were incomparably shocked. This blood-haired youth's cultivation and battle strength were too strong. 9 rays of primal chaos divine light appeared on the blood-haired youth's body and revolved around him. I am the 18th generation descendant of the Wood clan, Mu Kang. Brat, you dare to provoke my ancestor? Tell me your name if you have the guts. The crimson-haired youth arrived in front of Ji Yufei's avatar in an incomparably domineering manner. He then stared at Ji Yufei's avatar arrogantly and spoke in an incomparably disdainful tone. Ha ha, so that turtle hiding in the primal chaos is your 18th generation ancestor. Ji Yufei's clone couldn't help laughing. What? Is there a problem? The crimson-haired youth, Mu Kang, was baffled. Ha ha. Ji Yufei laughed and then resisted the urge to laugh. There's no problem. I'm Ji Yufei. Remember that. TCH, what's the point of talking to you? You're about to die. Ji Yufei's clone shook his head helplessly. He really was an idiot. You want to kill me? Ha ha. The crimson-haired youth, Mu Kang, laughed out loud. He wants to kill an expert from the primal chaos realm. At this time, even the old fogies of the ancestral god realm were stunned by Ji Yufei's clone. How could the primal chaos realm's experts be killed so easily? Ji Yufei's clone couldn't be bothered to waste words with him. In the next moment, he vanished into the void. Mu Kang didn't even think about it and directly punched forward. Boom. With a muffled sound, the 2 fists collided in an instant. In the next moment, the stars within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles directly exploded. The space between the two was instantly destroyed, and a huge black hole appeared in the starry sky. Primal chaos energy was blown out. Swish. Ji Yufei's clone appeared in the void, his right leg like a divine whip lashing at Mu Kang's head. Mu Kang lowered his head and dodged Ji Yufei's doppelganger's kick. Then, he spun around and kicked at Ji Yufei's doppelganger's chest. Mu Kang's heel ruthlessly struck the doppelganger's chest. Hihi, that's all you've got. You still dare to show off in front of me? Mu Kang was overjoyed, but just as he was feeling disdainful, a sharp swordlight shot out of his opponent's hand and slashed at Mu Kang's neck. In the next moment, Mu Kang's head was sent flying. Ji Yufei's doppelganger still wanted to make a move, but it was sent flying by the force of Kakura's kick. What a pity. Ji Yufei's clone shook his head helplessly. If he had been able to withstand that kick, he would have been able to kill this guy. The old fogies from the ancestral god realm were all dumbfounded. Ji Yufei had actually decapitated an expert from the primogenitor realm. That was an expert from the primogenitor realm. That's all you've got. What's there to be so arrogant about? Ji Yufei's clone didn't care about Mu Kang either. It wasn't as if he hadn't killed those fellows from the primogenitor realm before. Mu Kang's head and body had already reconnected. It was as if he had never been injured. This kind of recovery ability was truly amazing. It should be known that Ji Yufei's clone had also cultivated the 9 heaven-punishing swords. Not everyone could withstand that kind of heaven-punishing power. At this time, the ominous heaven-devouring sword floated in the void, emitting a terrifying aura. Countless Dao patterns were faintly discernible and interweaving on its blade. Swish! The ominous heaven-devouring sword turned into a ray of sword light and soared into the sky, trying to escape. A sneer rang out as a huge hand grabbed the escaping sword light. In the next moment, the sword light dissipated, and the ominous heaven-devouring sword appeared in the sword slave's hand. The sword slave took the ominous heaven-devouring sword. The sky-devouring ominous sword trembled violently in the sword slave's hand, and it wanted to struggle free from the sword slave's control. However, the sword slave was an existence that had cultivated the supreme sword Tao of the myriad sword salute, and he was once a supreme figure in the sword Tao. Among everyone present, only the sword slave could take away the ominous heaven-devouring sword. Not even Ji Yufei's clone could do it. The expert from the primogenitor realm, Mu Kang, couldn't sit still after seeing the sword slave take away the ominous heaven-devouring sword. He wanted to kill the sword slave and take it away. Your opponent is me. Ji Yufei's doppelganger appeared in front of Mu Kang and intercepted him. Get lost. Mu Kang didn't even think and immediately used a big move. His hands moved, and countless divine lights shot out from his hands and pierced through Ji Yufei's clone. Buzz! Ji Yufei's clone suddenly let out a rumble, and a lump of divine light surged out from his body, blocking the piercing divine lights. You are the one who should get lost. Ji Yufei's doppelganger also unleashed his ultimate move. He stretched out his right hand and a huge palm immediately appeared in the void, slapping towards the guy in front of him. This was the heaven-covering hand. A huge hand covered the sky, and it gave Mu Kang a feeling that he couldn't dodge it. This feeling was very sullen to him. Damn it! At this moment, the divine eye on Mu Kang's glabella suddenly opened, and an immortal divine light rushed out from it. The divine light flashed and pierced through Mu Kang's heaven-covering hand. How is this possible? This time, Ji Yufei's clone was stunned. Chapter 36-27. In the ancestral realm, the 18th generation descendant of the Wood clan, Mu Kang, displayed his strongest combat strength. The moment his divine eye opened, a destructive divine light shot out from his divine eye and pierced through Ji Yufei's clone's sky-covering palm. Ji Yufei's clone, Kang Q, the first Earth Spirit progenitor, demon divine, and the others were dumbfounded. Swoosh! The destructive divine light that shot out from Mu Kang's divine eye pierced through Ji Yufei's clone's sky-covering palm and pierced through Ji Yufei's clone. Ji Yufei's doppelganger reached out with his right hand and blocked the divine light of destruction. Is he crazy? How dare he block that guy's destructive divine light with his hand? Someone exclaimed. Even Kang Q, the demon divine, and the others were anxious. If even Ji Yufei wasn't a match for that guy, then they would also be in trouble. On the contrary, the sword slave who had just suppressed the ominous sky-devouring sword was very calm. He watched the battle between Ji Yufei's clone and the Wood clan expert from the ancestral realm. It wouldn't be surprising if the Wood clan's ancestor had the cultivation and combat strength to fight against Ji Yufei's clone. However, the Wood clan expert who was fighting against Ji Yufei's clone wasn't the Wood clan's ancestor, but the 18th generation descendant of the Wood clan. It was indeed shocking. At that moment, Ji Yufei's doppelganger's right palm emitted an immortal divine light, directly shattering the destructive divine light that had pierced through. Then, it instantly appeared in front of Mu Kura. The speed was so fast that even Mu Kang was shocked. Swoosh! Mu Kang didn't even think. The divine eye on his glabella opened and closed, and another destructive divine light shot out. The aura of destruction was vast and mighty, and the surrounding void was shaking like water. Ji Yufei's doppelganger ignored the destructive divine light and slammed his right hand on Mu Kura's chest. At the same time, his divine body suddenly became transparent, as if he was going to fuse with the surrounding void. What? Kikura only felt that the destructive divine light that shot out from his divine eyes seemed to pass through transparent air. He didn't feel any resistance, which made him extremely shocked. At the same time, he had already been sent flying over 100,000 kilometers away by Ji Yufei's palm strike, directly shattering a star. The huge star exploded, illuminating the pitch-black starry sky. Roar! With a furious roar, Mu Kang rushed out in an extremely miserable manner. A bloody hole had appeared on his chest, piercing through the front and back. He lowered his head to look at the bloody hole on his body in disbelief. This guy could actually blast a bloody hole in his divine body. How was that possible? Mu Kang was really going crazy. A powerful vitality burst out from his painful body, and the bloody hole on his chest was rapidly healing. In just a few breaths, the huge bloody hole had completely disappeared. The wood race cultivated the power of the wood element, the most primitive power of the wood element. The unique characteristic of the power of the wood element was its powerful vitality. The progenitor of the wood race was a primal chaos divine tree that was born from the primal chaos. This race might not be the strongest in the ancestral realm, but their vitality was something that all the other races in the ancestral realm couldn't compare to. The clansmen of the wood race were very hard to kill, and this was publicly acknowledged in the ancestral realm. Kill. Mu Kang went crazy. He immediately turned into a shadow and pounced at Ji Yufei's doppelganger. The divine eye on his glabella turned into a black vortex that seemed to be connected to hell and was going to devour everything in the world. As the strongest descendant among the 18 generations of the wood race, Mu Kang had always been valued by the progenitor of the wood race. He was one of the few clansmen who could receive personal guidance from the progenitor. He couldn't lose, at least not in the hands of a fellow from a low-grade world like the ancestral god realm. Buzz. The void trembled as the vortex on Mu Kang's glabella released an extremely terrifying devouring power. The surrounding void was collapsing and being destroyed as it was being devoured by the vortex on his glabella. Even Ji Yufei's doppelganger was involuntarily flying towards the vortex on Mu Kang's glabella. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. What kind of divine ability was this? A terrifying divine eye that could devour everything? Rumble. Just when everyone was stunned, a thunderous sound came from Ji Yufei's body. Rays of divine light rushed out from his body like lightning and tore apart the void. It also tore apart the vortex that appeared on Mu Kang's glabella. Preposterous. Mu Kang retreated in a panic. The divine eye vortex on his glabella immediately collapsed. His divine eye was tightly shut, and a trace of divine blood seeped out from it. Roar. Mu Kang roared in anger. He had a splitting headache, and the divine eye that he had painstakingly cultivated had almost collapsed. You are not a match for me. Let your ancestor fight with me personally. Ji Yufei's doppelganger said coldly and arrogantly. Mu Kang was shocked and angry at the same time. At this moment, he was shocked to discover that a hand had already imprinted on his chest. In the next moment, he heard a series of bone-cracking sounds coming from his body. In the next moment, Mu Kang didn't even have time to think before he collapsed in the void and turned into a bloody mist. However, Mu Kang's life force was extremely strong. The bloody mist instantly condensed together, and Mu Kang's figure appeared in the void. However, Ji Yufei's doppelganger slapped his body again. Mu Kang only had time to say the word "I" before he was slapped into a bloody mist by Ji Yufei's doppelganger. However, in the next moment, he condensed his physical body again. Mu Kang wanted to say something again, but just as he opened his mouth, he was tragically blasted apart by Ji Yufei's doppelganger. Mu Kang's physical body was blasted apart by Ji Yufei's doppelganger more than a dozen times. He could only say the word "I." He couldn't say the second word. It wasn't that he didn't want to say it, but he simply didn't have the chance to. F***ck. In the end, Mu Kang roared in grief and indignation. This roar was truly earth-shattering, because he could finally vent his pent-up anger. Tears streamed down Mu Kang's cheeks. He had finally spoken. You're a man of character. What are you crying for? So the fellow from the primogenitor realm is actually a sissy. Ayo, is this guy a tomboy among men? The old fogies of the ancestral god realm who were watching from the sidelines began to mock Mu Kang. What the hell is a tomboy among men? Someone asked in confusion. Mu Kang nearly vomited a mouthful of blood when he heard this. Chapter 36-28. Hearing the mocking words of the ancestral god realm's old-timers, Mu Kang wanted to die. Most infuriating of all was the fact that these lowly beings were mocking him for liking men. That hurt his self-esteem. He clearly liked women. Mu Kang wanted to cry, but no tears came out. All of you, shut up. Mu Kang was about to go crazy. No one had ever spoken to him like that in all his years of cultivation. He was the pride of the wood race, worshipped wherever he went. The pearls of the various races all favored him. As long as he waved his hand, the pearls of the various races would all rush to him, fearing that they would be the first to do so. TCH, a sissy is still acting so arrogant. Scram back to your primogenitor realm. One of the ancestral god realm's old-timers gave Mu Kang the finger. You deserve to die. Mu Kang let out a furious roar, and the tightly shut divine eye on his forehead suddenly opened. A beam of destructive divine light instantly shot out from that divine eye, directly turning that ancestral god realm ancestor into dregs. You. The rest of the ancestral god realm's old-timers paled at the sight. You lowly beings are the ones who are trash. Mu Kang swept his gaze around, the eye on his forehead constantly opening and closing. Every time it did, one of the ancestral god realm's old-timers was killed. Lowly beings. The rest of the ancestral god realm's old-timers nearly went mad with rage. This is the ancestral god realm. It's not your place to behave atrociously. At this moment, a white-robed young man charged over from the other side of the starry sky. Then, he extended his hand and grabbed at Mu Kang. Gu Fei's clone retreated to the side. He'd sensed many powerful auras in the surrounding starry sky. The ancestral god realm was a place of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Some of the true powerhouses hid themselves from the world, but when the ancestral god realm's people appeared in the starry sky, they couldn't sit still. As old-timers, they naturally knew many of the world's secrets. The ancestral god realm was a place they both yearned for and feared. Boom! With a loud bang, Mu Kang's palm directly collided with that expert from the ancestral god realm. Violent energy ripples spread out, causing the surrounding stars to explode. Two figures were moving at high speed. The battle prowess displayed by that white-robed youth was indeed astonishing. He was actually able to fight Mu Kang endlessly. This caused those old antiques of the ancestral god realm to be incomparably shocked. Bam! The white-robed youth exchanged a few blows and actually managed to blast Mu Kang apart with a single punch. How is this possible? Mu Kang instantly reconstructed his physical body. He found it hard to believe that he had been blasted apart by someone else's clone more than 10 times. In the end, the other party was indeed stronger than him. However, who was this guy? How could he be stronger than him? This was something that Mu Kang found hard to accept. Those fellows from the primogenitor realm aren't anything special. What's there to be so arrogant about? The white-clothed youth stared at Mu Kang in disdain. Lowly lifeform, what did you say? Mu Kang's eyes were red. These low-level creatures actually dared to look down on him. They truly deserved to die. I will kill all of you. Mu Kang seemed to have completely sunk into madness. He was about to fight to the death with that white-clothed youth. However, right at that moment, a huge hand reached out from the primal chaos in the depths of the starry sky and grabbed Mu Kang before pulling him back. Ancestor. Mu Kang wanted to struggle free, but that large hand didn't stop. Shut up. Don't you feel ashamed? The wood race's ancestor's icy voice rang out. Mu Kang directly shut his mouth, not daring to say anything else. However, just as the huge hand that stretched out from the chaos was about to grab Mu Kang back into the chaos, a ray of sword light suddenly descended from the sky and directly slashed the huge hand. 4,000 stop. What? A shocked and furious voice rang out from the primal chaos. Since you've come, there's no need for you to leave. Stay here. A voice rang out, and then a figure appeared in front of the primal chaos. A sword slashed out, and a miserable shriek rang out. Mu Kang was killed just like that. Kikura's endless life force was forcibly extracted by a sword, and then devoured cleanly by the sword. A mummified corpse fell from the starry sky. It was a pity for the 18th generation descendant of the wood race. He died just like that. This once again proved that one shouldn't act tough, or else they would die. You. The wood race's ancestor in the primal chaos was enraged, and a terrifying aura surged out from the primal chaos. However, In the next moment, the power of heavenly punishment descended and directly blocked the extreme-grade aura that crossed realms. The extreme-grade aura immediately retreated like the tide. Damn it! The wood race's ancestor in the primal chaos was infuriated. A descendant that he had painstakingly cultivated was killed just like that, and he couldn't sell him. He had to vent his anger. Just you wait. The terrifying aura in the primal chaos was quickly disappearing, but very quickly, it reappeared in the primal chaos. The wood race's ancestor did not dare to appear in the ancestral god realm. Do you want to take revenge for your 18th generation descendant? A figure wielding a divine sword stood in front of the primal chaos in the depths of the starry sky and spoke with a cold expression. This person was Ji Fei's clone. He had obtained the heaven-devouring ominous sword from the sword slave. Only the heaven-devouring ominous sword could easily kill the wood race's ancestor. The heaven-devouring ominous sword was a peerless ominous sword that devoured everything. It was probably suppressed in the Sword Valley for too long that this ominous sword was extremely thirsty. As long as it contained spiritual chi, the spiritual chi contained within it would be completely devoured by the peerless ominous sword. Whether it was a human, immortal, god, devil, or demon, as long as they were slashed by the heaven-devouring ominous sword, there would only be one outcome. Their essence would be instantly devoured, and they would die. With the heaven-devouring ominous sword in my hand, why would I be afraid of the wood race? You killed Mu Kang. At this moment, a figure walked out from the primal chaos. An extremely powerful wood elemental energy fluctuation erupted from this person's body. Who are you? Ji Fei's clone tightened his grip on the sword. The experts in the ancestral god realm were not weaklings, it was just that they had encountered someone stronger than them. At this moment, the white-robed youth retreated to the side because he felt an incomparably powerful pressure coming from the primal chaos. An extremely dangerous existence was hiding in the depths of the primal chaos. At this moment, the figure separated the primal chaos and appeared in front of Ji Fei's clone. Chapter 36-29. In the depths of the ancestral god realm's central continent's starry sky, a chaotic passageway appeared and a powerful figure walked out of it. Ji Fei's clone's eyes narrowed when he saw this person. This person was a middle-aged man in black with a rough appearance and a tall stature. The aura this middle-aged man exuded caused Ji Fei's clone to involuntarily be moved. This person was the same as Kang Q and the sword slave. He was once an extreme-grade sovereign, but he wasn't one anymore. He didn't expect the Wood clan's progenitor to find such an existence. This person's body exuded an incomparably powerful wood elemental energy. Since you killed Mu Kang, you shall accompany him in death. The middle-aged man's face darkened as he stared at Ji Fei's clone. A heart-palpitating killing intent erupted from his body. In the next moment, the middle-aged man didn't wait for Ji Fei's clone to speak. He reached out his right hand and grabbed at Ji Fei's clone. Rumble. A huge palm enveloped the entire sky, including Ji Fei's clone. A terrifying energy rippled out from the palm, shaking the world. However, before Ji Fei's clone could react, a furious roar came from the side. A divine light pierced through the void, piercing through the hand that was grabbing at Ji Fei's clone. A figure appeared between Ji Fei's clone and the black-robed middle-aged man. Your opponent is me. That person stared at the black-robed middle-aged man coldly. Everyone looked over and saw that it was the white-robed youth who destroyed Mu Kang's body. Could it be him? Some of the old antiques in the ancestral god realm suddenly thought of a person. They were all shocked because this person had an extraordinary background. His background was even greater than Sword Valley's ancestor One Sword and the Central Continent's ancestor Worldly Daoist. There was no doubt that this white-robed youth was powerful. Me. Since you're here to die, I'll fulfill your wish. The black-robed middle-aged man sneered. He didn't seem to put the white-robed youth in his eyes at all. His face was cold and arrogant. He, it's hard to say who will come to die. The white-robed youth chuckled. Ha ha. The black-clothed middle-aged man laughed loudly. Everyone knows how to boast, but those who dare to squeak in front of me, Mu Xiao, have all been sent on their way by me. Then come and send me off. The white-robed youth said disapprovingly. Kill. The black-robed middle-aged man, Mu Xiao, roared. In the next moment, his figure instantly disappeared into the void, as if he had suddenly merged with the surrounding void. At this time, Ji Yufei's clone had already retreated to the side. This was a confrontation between the experts of the ancestral god realm and the experts of the ancestral god realm. The sword slave, monster divine venerable, first ancestor of earth spirit, and the others also retreated to a distance and watched the show from the side. This kind of cross-border battle was related to the reputation of the experts from both worlds, but it had nothing to do with them. One thought god execution. The white-robed youth roared. A beam of divine light immediately rushed out from between his eyebrows, instantly merging with the surrounding void. In the next moment, a figure was slashed out of the void. It was the expert of the Wood clan, Mu Xiao. There was a bloody mark on Mu Xiao's forehead, but in the next moment, the bloody mark instantly disappeared as if it had never been there. The white-robed youth's eyes flashed when he saw this. This guy was quite impressive, actually dodging the one-thought god execution divine ability. Not bad, but you still have to die. Mu Xiao's expression darkened even more. His figure suddenly blurred, and then a figure instantly appeared in front of the white-robed youth, directly colliding with him. The white-robed youth was startled, and hurriedly retreated. His speed was as fast as a phantom, extremely fast. However, Mu Xiao's figure was like a shadow, directly colliding with the white-robed youth. In the next moment, the white-robed youth's divine body actually exploded. What? The eyes of the experts from the ancestral god realm in the starry sky almost fell out of their sockets when they saw this. How could this be possible? Some of the old-timers had already guessed the white-robed youth's identity. It was precisely because they had guessed who he was that the ancestral god realm's old-timers were so shocked and in such disbelief. However, what happened next left everyone dumbfounded. The white-robed youth's divine body had turned into a bloody mist that instantly enveloped Mu Xiao. Roar! Mu Xiao roared again and again. He couldn't remain calm, because the white-robed youth's flesh and blood was actually trying to devour him. Go to hell! Mu Xiao gritted his teeth, and in the next moment, his body actually exploded. An extremely terrifying destructive energy erupted, causing countless stars to explode and a large swath of the void to be annihilated. Everyone was indescribably shocked. No one had expected such a scene to occur. This guy is quite ruthless. Ji Yufei's clone couldn't help but be moved by this scene. In the next moment, two figures appeared in the bloody mist, moving at high speed as they fought fiercely, each wanting to kill the other. Rumble. The entire starry sky shook. How can such a low-level world have such powerful beings? Divine intent fluctuations came from the other end of the primal chaos passageway. Beings from a low-level world. The old-timers of the ancestral god realm felt the fluctuations and were so angry that their noses were crooked. Fuck, people from the ancestral god realm think they're superior? Divine white-robed, for the dignity of the billions of beings in the ancestral god realm, you have to kill that guy. Someone shouted. That's right. Let these arrogant bastards know the power of our ancestral god realm's expert. Someone shouted. Bastards of the ancestral god realm, go eat shit. One of the ancestral god realm's old-timers cursed. You don't know the difference between life and death. A furious roar came from the other end of the primal chaos passageway. Then, one powerful figure after another appeared in the primal chaos, faintly discernible. Every single one of the figures gave off an extremely powerful energy wave. The aura that the dozen or so figures gave off was so terrifying that it seemed as if it could crush the world. Kill all these low-level beings. Someone in the primal chaos passageway issued an order to the ancestral god realm's experts. Then, they walked out of the primal chaos. 16 experts, all quasi-sovereigns. The old-timers of the ancestor god realm in the starry sky were startled by this group of fellows who had crossed realms. It must be known that 16 quasi-supreme beings were dispatched at once. This kind of strength wasn't something that ordinary forces could compare to. This was enough to show how powerful the ancestral god realm's wood race was. The ancestral god realm's wood race wasn't something the ancestral god realm's forces could compare to. Even the central continent's Pang race couldn't compare. Of course, The Pang race had already become a thing of the past. The current central continent was dominated by the primal chaos golden rock race. Some of the ancestral god realms experts were truly frightened by the wood race's lineup. The auras of 16 quasi-sovereigns converged together, forming a pressure so powerful that even the heavens and earth paled in comparison. It was so powerful that everyone felt as if they were suffocating. "All of you, come at me together." An old man who was the leader of the wood race's 16 quasi-sovereigns swept his gaze over the ancestral god realm's old-timers and said arrogantly, "What?" The ancestral god realm's old-timers were indescribably enraged. These fellows were too arrogant. They'd never seen anyone so arrogant. "Everyone, let's attack together and kill these bastards." One of the ancestral god realm's old-timers roared and attacked the 16 quasi-sovereigns. He waved his right hand and countless rays of sword light descended from the sky, raining down on the wood race's quasi-sovereigns. Each ray of sword light tore through the void. The 16 quasi-sovereigns had no intention of dodging in the face of such a ferocious attack. Instead, a short and stout fellow walked out from among them. Then, the short and fat fellow opened his mouth and inhaled. The countless sword lights that descended from the sky all flew into his mouth and were swallowed in one gulp. "What?" The ancestral god realm's old-timers were dumbfounded. These fellows from the ancestral god realm were actually this strong? In the next moment, the fat man spat at the old fogey, and the countless sword lights he had devoured turned into a gale that shot toward the old fogey from the ancestor god realm. The ancestral god realm's old-timers were shocked beyond belief. Before he could even process what was happening, the rays of sword light pierced through his divine body. In the next moment, the ancestral god realm's old-timers breathed their last. Everyone was indescribably shocked. These fellows from the ancestral god realm were actually so freakish. Were they even going to let them live? At this time, these fellows from the primogenitor realm had thoroughly enraged countless experts of the ancestral god realm. In the next moment, countless divine artifacts flew up and smashed towards the 16 quasi-sovereigns of the primogenitor realm, emitting ripples of power that shook the heavens. But it was that fat man again. He opened his mouth and inhaled, sucking in all the divine artifacts flying toward the ancestral god realm's quasi-sovereigns and swallowed them all. The ancestral god realm's old-timers were dumbfounded. Was this guy a heaven-devouring beast? How could he eat so much? Rumble. The entire void was shaking. It was as if this fatty could swallow the surrounding void into his stomach. How is this possible? Chapter 36:30. The wood race's primogenitor had used a great divine ability to open up a primal chaos passageway that connected the ancestral god realm and the ancestral god realm. He wanted to take the ominous Sky Devourer sword. Unfortunately, someone didn't want to let him take away the second most powerful divine weapon in the ancestral god realm. But now that the situation had developed to the point where even Gu Fei's clone didn't resemble it, everyone's attention was no longer on the ominous Sky Devourer sword. The situation had turned into a conflict between the ancestral god realm's old-timers and the wood race. The 16 quasi-sovereigns of the wood race had crossed over to the ancestral god realm, stunning the ancestral god realm's old-timers. The wood race was just one race in the ancestral god realm, but they could easily dispatch 16 quasi-sovereigns. They were strong enough to sweep through the entire ancestral god realm. Some of the ancestral god realm's old-timers were shocked when they thought of this. Is the ancestral god realm really as the legends say? Is it the origin of all worlds? The worldly Daoist muttered to himself. At this time, the short and fat guy from the wood clan of the primogenitor realm displayed a divine ability that shocked everyone. He was like a heaven-devouring beast, swallowing all the divine artifacts the antiques of the ancestral god realm had taken out. In the next moment, the ancestral god realm's old-timers paled. They lost contact with the divine weapons the fatty had swallowed. How is this possible? A white-haired black-robed youth suddenly let out a blood-curdling screech. A bloody gash actually split open on his forehead, and a trace of blood directly seeped out from the wound. My divine weapon. The white-haired young man became dispirited. His god artifact had actually been refined by the fatty. He had completely lost the god artifact he had cultivated for countless years. Self-refined divine weapons were closely related to the cultivator themselves. A portion of their cultivation was tied to the divine weapon, so the destruction of it would be a huge blow to the cultivator themselves. Aside from the white-haired youth, many of the ancestral god realm's old-timers felt the impact and retreated. What a guy! When they witnessed this scene, those seniors that hadn't made a move earlier were extremely shocked. Could it be that this fellow obtained the inheritance of the legendary heaven-devouring beast? At this time, Jiu Fei's clone was thinking about another matter. This matter was very important. It seemed like the ancestral realm wasn't affected. Extreme Dao Supremes could still appear in the ancestral realm. Could it be that only the ancestral god realm and the other worlds were affected by the heavenly punishment? If that was really the case, then who was the one behind all of this? To be more precise, which group of people was the one behind all of this? After all, even an extreme-grade sovereign wouldn't be able to suppress all the extreme-grade sovereigns in this world by himself. Even the old antiques of the ancestral god realm, who had lived for countless years, did not know about such a great secret of heaven and earth. Only existences at the level of extreme supreme beings were qualified to know about it. Although Jiu Fei's avatar was curious, he could only vaguely guess some things. Boom! At this time, a loud explosion rang out. The white-robed divine sovereign and Mu Xiao of the Wood clan were rapidly moving through the starry sky. Their power was infinitely close to the extreme-grade sovereign realm, and they were constantly clashing. Circles of destructive power spread out in all directions. Stars exploded one after another, like the most beautiful fireworks, dissipating in the starry sky. Kill! The white-robed divine sovereign's killing intent soared into the sky. Heaven and earth paled in comparison, and the souls of countless living beings trembled. After that, the entire void in front of the white-robed divine honorable god collapsed. The destructive power turned into a torrent and swept directly toward Mu Xiao. Cosmic palm! Mu Xiao shouted and thrust his palm forward. Yin and yang energies surged and intertwined in his palm, as if a world was evolving in his palm. The torrent of destructive energy was completely devoured by the vortex in his palm. Even the white-robed divine sovereign was sucked into Mu Xiao's palm. Cosmic upheaval! The white-robed divine sovereign roared, and a powerful force of the divine way surged out of his body. This force stirred up the world and shattered the void. He broke through Mu Xiao's technique and appeared in front of Mu Xiao in an instant. He reached out and grabbed Mu Xiao's head. Swoosh! Mu Xiao left an afterimage where he stood, and his real body had already retreated hundreds of meters away. He was extremely fast. The white-robed divine sovereign's grab only destroyed an afterimage. Buzz! At this time, there was a rumble from Mu Xiao's body. 9 beams of chaotic divine light rushed out of his body and pierced through the white-robed divine sovereign. This is, white-robed divine venerable's pupils constricted. Each of the 9 beams of chaotic divine light was wrapped in a battle spear. Those were chaotic divine weapons, and they were definitely of a higher quality than the divine weapons in the ancestral god realm. 5 elements absolute kill. The white-robed divine honor lord immediately used his famous magic power. His body became blurry, and his figure instantly split into 5 shadows, moving quickly in the starry sky. The 5 elements divine power erupted, and the 5 afterimages dodged the 9 beams of chaotic divine light and surrounded Mu Xiao in an instant. What? Mu Xiao's shock was no small matter. He hadn't even finished his thoughts when the 5 afterimages charged towards him. Boom! There was a loud noise, and the 5 elements divine power exploded Mu Xiao's body. The 5 elements divine power exploded, and even the blood mist that Mu Xiao's body had turned into was destroyed. It was important to know that each of the 5 afterimages of the white-robed divine sovereign was a type of 5 elements divine power. When the 5 elements divine power collided, the destructive power that erupted was definitely several times stronger than a single fire elemental power, metal elemental power, or any other elemental power. What? That powerful primogenitor realm expert was killed by the hierarch just like that. Seeing this scene, someone cried out in surprise. The white-robed divine venerate cultivated the 5 elements sacred art and was also known as the 5 elements divine venerate. Although the 5 elements divine venerate looked young, He was a true ancient being. Even during the Great War of Gods and Demons, the white-robed supreme divinity had already risen and killed countless demons. However, during the final stage of the Great War of Gods and Demons, the five-element divinity disappeared without a trace. Some people said that he fought with a demon and perished together with the demon. But now, it seemed that it was all just a rumor. Not only did the divine sovereign not die, but he had even jumped out and killed an expert from the Wood clan. That wasn't an ordinary expert, but an existence infinitely close to the Wood clan's supreme level. He had once been an extreme Tao sovereign. However, at this moment, bits of chaos Wood elemental essence chi gathered in the void, and a blurry figure began to appear in the void. He's still alive. The power of the five elements surged as the divine sovereign appeared in the void. He extended his right hand and the figure flew towards him. It shrunk rapidly and was caught in his hand. In the next moment, a ball of five elemental divine fire appeared in his hand and refined the Wood elemental essence into nothingness. An enraged consciousness came from the other end of the chaotic passageway. Mu Xiao's death was a great loss to the Wood clan of the ancestral realm. Given time, Mu Xiao would be able to fully recover his extreme Dao cultivation and become an extreme Dao sovereign. Extreme Dao sovereigns were influential existences in the ancestral realm. The Wood clan had great ambitions and had long set their sights on the ancestral god realm. They were the ones behind the chaos in the ancestral god realm. What? Come and fight me if you have the guts. The divine sovereign's expression was frosty. You're pissing me off. If I could get there, I could squash a bug like you with a single finger. On the other end of the chaotic passageway, the Wood clan's progenitor was infuriated. He couldn't kill his way over. It was those guys' fault. The Wood clan's progenitor was furious. Due to the existence of heavenly punishment, he could only send quasi-supreme experts into the ancestral god realm. He didn't dare to come over from the other end of the chaotic passageway. TCH, you're not ashamed to talk big. Come and try. Do you believe I won't blow your soul away with one breath? The divine sovereign was very disdainful, but he knew that the Wood clan's progenitor wouldn't dare to come over. Just you wait. It won't be long before I go over and destroy this world. The Wood clan's progenitor said hatefully. I think you should just hide in the ancestral realm. It's very dangerous here. It won't be good if you die the moment you come over. The divine sovereign mocked. Roar. The Wood clan's progenitor was completely enraged. At that moment, the chaotic energy in the chaos passageway surged. A chaotic figure rushed out of the chaos passageway and instantly appeared in front of Divine Supremacy 5 Element. This, Divine Supremacy 5 Elements jumped in fright. The next moment, a powerful force slammed into his body, sending him flying thousands of miles away. He only came to a stop after smashing through several stars. Damn it! On the other end of the chaotic passageway, the Wood clan's progenitor was very unwilling. He wanted to kill the divine sovereign in one go, but he underestimated the latter. Preposterous. Divinity of 5 elements rushed back from afar. Half of his body was gone, but the flesh and bones of the wound were rapidly growing back. Soon, the half of his body was completely healed. At this time, Jiu Fei's clone suddenly looked into the depths of the sky. He could vaguely sense an unusual aura appearing between heaven and earth. What? Chapter 36-31. The ancestral god realm was filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. The Wood clan's progenitor had gravely underestimated those old fogies. Thus, tragedy befell the Wood clan. Even an existence like Mu Xiao, a former extreme grade sovereign, was annihilated by Hierarch Pentelemental. This was a huge loss for the Wood clan. The Wood clan's progenitor didn't hesitate to use a realm-crossing attack to kill Hierarch Pentelemental. However, Divine Venerate 5 Elements was no ordinary powerhouse. Even though the Wood clan's primogenitor had personally made a move, he had not been able to kill Divine Venerate 5 Elements. Just as the 5 Elements Divine Honorable was healing his injured body, a terrifying aura suddenly appeared in the sky. The next moment, the sky shattered with a boom. A chaotic divine pattern broke through the void and appeared in the sky above the central continent. Rumble. A terrifying aura spread out from the chaotic divine pattern and instantly enveloped the entire central continent. At this moment, the souls of billions of living beings in the central continent trembled. Extreme Tao energy. Everyone was inexplicably shocked. The divine pattern of chaos had actually released an extreme power, which immediately triggered the power of heaven's punishment. A destructive force descended from the sky and obliterated the primal chaos diagram. The power of the heavenly punishment was unleashed. It was a power that even an extreme-grade supreme being would find hard to resist. However, what shocked everyone was the fact that the mighty power from the chaotic divine diagram actually managed to block the power of the heavenly punishment. What? The cultivators of the central continent were dumbfounded. How was it possible that someone was able to ignore the heavenly punishment? Your time of death has come. A furious roar came from the other end of the primal chaos passage. The next moment, the primal chaos passage crumbled as a terrifying figure tore through the void and crossed over into the central continent. An aura that made everyone's soul tremble crossed over into the central continent. The billions of souls in the ancestral god realm were terrified to the extreme. Even Jiu Fei's clone turned pale with fright at this moment. He didn't expect the other party to have such a move that could block the power of the heavenly punishment that could even destroy an extreme-grade sovereign. The old fogies of the ancestral god realm were dumbfounded. Flee. Some people didn't even think about it and directly turned around to flee. That was an extreme-grade supreme being. That guy who had crossed over was an extreme-grade supreme being. Who could compete with an extreme-grade supreme being? 4,000. No one can escape. The terrifying figure that was crossing over directly stretched out his hand, and the huge palm actually enveloped the entire starry sky. It was as if he wanted to grab the entire starry sky in his hand. It was terrifying. This was the terror of an extreme Tao paragon. A single move was enough to destroy heaven and earth. Haha, they are dead for sure. At this time, the 16 experts of the Wood clan retreated to the side. At this time, there was no need for them to take action. The primogenitor alone was enough to suppress all the fellows from the ancestor god realm. Of course, the experts of the Wood clan had no choice but to admit that there were still some existences in the ancestral god realm who could contend against them. However, so what if this was the case? Once the primogenitor took action, no matter how powerful an existence was, their body and soul would be destroyed. Could it be that they would die? Rumble. The giant hand that had appeared in the starry sky was closing in. Countless stars were crumbling, and the entire starry sky was about to be completely destroyed. Powerful figures rushed out from all over the starry sky. They were the ancestor god realm's old antiques that had been hiding to the side to watch the show. At this time, the ancestor god realm's old antiques were panicking. They were like fish trapped in a giant net. They tried to break out, but in the end, they would be caught in the net and die. Preposterous. Five Elements Hierarch was both shocked and infuriated by the scene, but he couldn't think of a way to resolve the crisis in front of him. Buzz. At that moment, the sound of a sword rang out, and an immortal beam of sword light cut through the dim starry sky, piercing through the huge hand of chaos that was grabbing down. The power of the extreme path was vast and mighty. Sword Slave. Jiu Fei's clone's heart shook when he sensed the sword Dao energy fluctuation. The sword slave might not be an extreme Dao paragon, but he was once an extreme Dao paragon. Although the sword in the sword slave's hand wasn't the myriad god ancestral sword, it was still a supreme sword artifact. With the divine chaos diagram blocking the heavenly punishment, the sword slave didn't have any qualms about using the extreme Dao paragon's power. It was no different from an extreme Dao paragon's attack. Swish. The immortal sword light directly pierced through the chaotic hand, causing it to dissipate in the void. Amen. The Wood race's progenitor, who was crossing over, couldn't help but be shocked when he saw this scene. The ancestral god realm actually had the existence of the extreme Dao. This was beyond his expectations. No one in the ancestor god realm dared to use the power of the extreme Dao when the heavenly punishment appeared, but that didn't mean that it didn't exist. With the divine chaos diagram blocking the heavenly punishment, the central continent's experts had no qualms about using the extreme Dao paragon's divine weapon. At this moment, The sword slave had fused with the extreme grade sword that he had refined himself. He had actually used this method to temporarily restore his extreme grade cultivation base. Without any hesitation, the sword slave attacked the Wood clan's primogenitor who was about to enter the ancestor god realm. 9 immortal sword lights shot out from the sword slave's body and instantly pierced through the Wood clan's primogenitor. Damn it! The Wood clan's primogenitor was enraged, but the sword light's power shocked him. He waved his right hand and a primal chaos divine shield appeared in front of him. The 9 beams of sword light shot out by the sword slaves collided with the primal chaos divine shield in front of the Wood race progenitor. In the next moment, a violent burst of sword energy actually forced the Wood race progenitor, who already had 1 foot in the ancestral god realm, back. The Wood clan's primogenitor roared in anger. It wasn't an easy task even for an extreme Dao paragon to cross over from another world. How dare you behave so atrociously in the ancestor god realm? Do you really think there's no one left in the ancestor god realm? The sword slave sneered. In the next moment, he charged into the primal chaos and chased after the Wood clan's primogenitor. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned and dumbfounded. At this moment, the chaotic divine pattern that enveloped the entire central continent became unstable under the power of the heavenly punishment, as if it could collapse at any time. Just as the divine chaos pattern was about to collapse, the void collapsed and a total of 18 strands of extreme Dao power crossed over. The powerful extreme Dao power directly poured into the divine chaos pattern in the sky. What's going on? Countless old-timers in the ancestor god realm nearly pissed their pants. 18 extreme Dao paragons? Didn't that mean there were 18 extreme Dao paragons attacking at the same time? There were actually 18 extreme Dao paragons in the ancestral god realm working together to resist the heavenly punishment. How extravagant. Gu Fei's clone couldn't remain calm either. This was the first time he saw someone who could resist the heavenly punishment. It seemed like the ancestral god realm had made preparations. Rumble. The entire starry sky shook again. Countless stars were on the verge of collapsing. Another terrifying figure tore through the void and was about to cross over to the ancestral god realm. Let me have a go at you. Kang Q roared. He instantly fused with his extreme Dao divine sword and regained his extreme Dao cultivation. Then, he charged towards the terrifying figure that was about to enter the ancestral god realm. Without any suspense, Kang Q also forced the extreme Dao paragons to retreat. Then, they started fighting in the primal chaos. Kang Q and the sword slave gained a lot of advantages. One should know that the extreme Dao paragons had crossed over to the ancestral god realm and had to endure the immense pressure of crossing over. This way, Kang Q and the sword slave could fight against the extreme Dao paragons. For a former extreme Dao paragons like Kang Q, he could use special methods to temporarily recover his extreme Dao paragons. However, there was a serious shortcoming: he couldn't maintain his extreme Dao paragons for a long time. At this moment, other than the 18 extreme Dao paragons who were supporting the primal chaos divine diagram, there were 20 extreme Dao paragons from the ancestral god realm, including the Wood clan's progenitor and the mysterious extreme Dao paragons. 20 extreme grade supremes. Since ancient times, there would only be so many extreme grade supremes jumping out during a realm war, right? The battle between the extreme Dao paragons was terrifying. The primal chaos had already exploded. The primal chaos was vast and mighty. The extreme Dao paragon's aura that leaked out caused the hearts of countless experts to palpitate. Fortunately, they weren't fighting in the ancestral god realm. Otherwise, the starry sky above the ancestral god realm's central continent would be directly destroyed, and the entire central continent would be destroyed. At this moment, the entire central continent was constantly shaking under the collision of the extreme Dao paragon's aura. Boom! Just as everyone was watching the battle with their mouths agape, a part of the void in the starry sky suddenly collapsed. A supreme figure directly rushed out of the shattered void. The moment this figure appeared, the void around him was immediately annihilated. He was like a supreme of destruction. He hadn't even made a move, but the entire starry sky was already on the verge of collapsing. How dare you? Do you even want us to live? The ancestral god realm old-timers in the starry sky despaired. Another extreme paragon from the primogenitor realm charged out and unleashed his extreme god might. Some of the old-timers who were too close to the primogenitor realm were directly hit by the extreme god might and turned into clouds of blood mist that dissipated into the void. These old-timers who had lived for countless years probably never imagined that they would die in such a way. It was truly too unjust. Let me. The first Earth Spirit ancestor fused with the primal chaos divine wheel, and an extreme Tao paragon's divine aura immediately erupted from his body. In the next moment, he appeared in front of the extreme Tao paragons and punched the extreme Tao paragons back into the primal chaos. Chapter 36-32. The starfield was shattered, and primal chaos chi surged. A battle between extreme Taos and supremes had erupted in the primal chaos. A battle of this level was incomparably terrifying and could easily destroy a part of the world. Fortunately, the battle was taking place in the primal chaos. Otherwise, the entire central continent would have been destroyed by the power of the extreme Tao. Billions of lives would have died. This was something that no one was willing to see. One must know that even for an extreme supremacy, countless living beings were a type of resource. If they destroyed a world every time they conquered it, it would definitely be a waste, and no one would do that. Boom. Just at this time, a figure charged out of the primal chaos. A powerful aura of the extreme Tao spread out, shaking the entire starfield. The nearby stars exploded, and the entire world seemed like it was about to collapse. Roar. That person raised his head to the sky and let out a long roar. Once again, he dived into the primal chaos. Inside the primal chaos chi crazily tumbled about. Although the terrifying aura of extreme Tao had been greatly weakened by the primal chaos chi, it was still not something that anyone could withstand. The ancestral god realm's old-timers retreated as far away as they could, not daring to watch the battle from up close. Those below the extreme Tao were ants. This saying was absolutely true. Even those old antiques were no different from ants in front of extreme Tao powerhouses. Boom. With a loud bang, a part of the void in the star region exploded. An immortal sword light rushed out of the chaos and a figure appeared in the starry sky. A soul-shaking sword chi fluctuation erupted from this person. This person was Kang Q. He was also a sword cultivator. However, Kang Q hadn't become a supremacy through the sword Tao. His sword Tao was infinitely close to the extreme Tao, and a single slash of his sword could destroy heaven and earth. Of course, such a mighty sword Tao could only be executed by sword slaves. However, none of the sword Tao cultivators would say that they were inferior to others. After all, their own sword was the most formidable sword. Rumble. A terrifying figure appeared in the depths of the primal chaos, wanting to enter the ancestral god realm. The aura of the extreme Tao shocked everyone present. However, even though the primal chaos figure wanted to enter the ancestral god realm, it wasn't an easy task. This was because the extreme grade supremes of the ancestral god realm had to break through the boundary energy in order to enter the ancestral god realm. As for the primogenitor realm's extreme Tao supremes, they needed to break through the world energy, which was also the world energy. There were two types of world energy. One was the primogenitor realm's world energy, and the other was the ancestral god realm's world energy. Even someone as powerful as an extreme supremacy would find it difficult to cross over to the other side of the barrier. Of course, if no one stopped them, the extreme grade supremes of the ancestral realm could enter the ancestral god realm. The problem was that Kang Q and the others wouldn't let the extreme grade supremes of the ancestral realm cross over so easily. Kill. Kang Q once again transformed into an immortal sword light and charged into the depths of the chaos to fight with that figure. He did not need to enter the ancestral world, so he was not affected by the power of the world. Swish. The extreme Tao level sword light directly pierced through the void and struck the primal chaos figure. Blood splashed out. That extreme Tao supreme from the primogenitor realm was injured. Damn it. That extreme grade supremacy was shocked and furious. His power was affected, or else he wouldn't be in such a passive position. Rumble. The giant figure quickly made a move, and a huge primal chaos hand directly grabbed at Kang Q's sword light. When Kang Q's sword light slashed on the huge primal chaos hand, sparks burst out. The huge primal chaos hand was as tough as an extreme Dao divine artifact, or even tougher. It was able to block Kang Q's extreme Dao sword light. Kang Q's sword light broke through the primal chaos as though it was splitting open the sky. It constantly clashed with the huge primal chaos hand, and the sword chi waves dispersed the surrounding primal chaos aura. Seeing this scene, everyone was indescribably shocked. That fellow from the ancestral world actually only used a right hand, and it was only a right hand, but it was able to fight against Kang Q. Swish. Blood splashed out again, and that extreme grade supremacist's arm was struck again. This supreme's palm was trained to the extreme, but his arm was still injured by the extreme Dao sword light. Immortal and indestructible, the extreme grade supremacy roared. Then, a layer of immortal primal chaos divine light emerged on his arm, and in the next moment, the wound on his arm was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Clang! The huge primal chaos hand shook and actually sent Kang Q's immortal sword light flying. That giant primal chaos figure was executing a great divine ability, wanting to tear apart the ancestral god realm's world power and enter the ancestral god realm directly. One of his arms had already pierced through, followed by half of his body. Seeing that the extreme grade supremacy was about to enter the ancestral god realm, Kang Q couldn't help but feel anxious. At this moment, over at the ancestral god realm, 20 extreme grade supremacy worked together to break through the realm wall, and they worked together to control the primal chaos divine diagram in the sky to block the power of heaven punishment. What's going on? At this moment, the entire ancestral god realm was in an uproar, and the 4 great regions were shaken. There was actually someone who could resist the power of heaven punishment. How was this possible? The entire central continent was enveloped by the primal chaos divine diagram. At this moment, the experts from the other 4 great regions were indescribably shocked. They realized that they actually couldn't enter the central continent. The primal chaos divine diagram had sealed the entire central continent. Regardless of whether it was teleportation platforms or other cross-region methods, they couldn't enter the central continent from the other 4 great regions. Preposterous. Those bastards from the ancestral god realm. In the East Continent, in the ancestral land of the primal chaos golden rock race, Ji Yufei looked in the direction of the central continent, and his eyes constantly flickered. He was very familiar with the aura of the ancestral god realm, because his avatar had entered the ancestral god realm before. There seems to be the aura of someone familiar. Zhonghan appeared behind Ji Yufei. After the battle at the Pang clan, he returned to the East Continent and returned the myriad god ancestral sword to Ji Yufei. Kang Q and the others are still in the central continent. Could it be that those people from the ancestral god realm are attacking them? Ji Yufei muttered to himself. It's the primal chaos Fengtian diagram. Xian Ying's figure also appeared behind Ji Yufei. He was also an extreme Dao sovereign of the ancestral god realm, so he naturally knew a lot about the ancestral god realm. What? Zhonghan couldn't help but be shocked. How is this possible? Didn't the primal chaos Fengtian diagram disappear for countless years? How can it appear again? A Dao diagram that can resist the power of heaven punishment. Do you think an ordinary Dao diagram can have such power? Xian Ying's expression was solemn as he looked at Zhonghan. Go and take a look. Ji Yufei said. Yes, Master. Chapter 36-33. Ji Yufei didn't know what the primal chaos sky ceiling diagram was, but from the conversation between Zhonghan and Xian Ying, he knew that the primal chaos sky ceiling diagram was an incredible item. A divine diagram that could contend against the heavenly punishment was not something an ordinary extreme Dao artifact could compare to. Rumble, the primal chaos sealed the sky, and an incomparably shocking sound spread out from the sky, sealing this part of the world. Even an extreme-grade sovereign would find it hard to break through the sky diagram and rush out. Although Ji Yufei was strong, he wasn't an extreme sovereign. This time, he was in trouble. The energy fluctuation from the primal chaos sky ceiling diagram was too powerful. He sensed at least 20 extreme sovereign auras. How could there be so many extreme sovereigns in the primal chaos sky ceiling diagram? This didn't make sense. Ji Yufei was very shocked. It must be known that it was already very amazing for an ordinary great world to have a few extreme-grade sovereigns throughout the ages. However, the primal chaos sky-ceiling diagram sent out 20 extreme sovereigns at once. This was more than the total number of extreme sovereigns that were born in several great worlds. Gu Fei pondered for a moment before summoning the Fire Ape Primogenitor and the Extreme Dao Corpse Demon. At this moment, the two of them were cultivating in the Earth ancestral vein of the chaotic Golden Rock clan. They wanted to recover their peak cultivation as soon as possible. Swish, swish. Two figures appeared behind Gu Fei. The moment the Extreme Dao Corpse Demon and the Fire Ape Primogenitor appeared, they were shocked by the terrifying aura that came from the central continent. The Fire Ape Primogenitor and the Extreme Dao Corpse Demon couldn't believe that the heavenly punishment that descended from the sky of the central continent was blocked. They didn't dare to display their Extreme Dao cultivation. They needed to use a special technique to seal themselves and carefully conceal their auras, afraid that they would attract the heavenly punishment. But now, there was actually someone who could resist the heavenly punishment that could kill an Extreme Dao sovereign. This shocked the Fire Ape Primogenitor and the Extreme Dao Corpse Demon. "You guys go and take a look," Gu Fei said. "Yes, Master." The Fire Ape Progenitor and the Extreme Dao Corpse Demon immediately disappeared into the void. Gu Fei had sent out his four most powerful supreme martial artists. He had a premonition that this time, those fellows from the ancestral realm were going to be ruthless towards the ancestral god realm. To those fellows from the Primogenitor's realm, the ancestral god realm was merely an inferior world. However, no one expected that a mere low-grade world would actually lose a few powerhouses from the Primogenitor realm. This left the Primogenitor realm in disbelief. In fact, the extreme Dao Supremes of the Primogenitor realm had already made their move. This was because the power of heavenly punishment had suddenly appeared in all the lower worlds under the Primogenitor realm's rule. This was no small matter to the Supremes of the ancestral realm. Therefore, the appearance of the primal chaos sky-ceiling diagram wasn't a coincidence. A mere ancestral god realm wasn't something that the extreme Dao Supremes of the ancestral god realm cared about. This was just a test. They wanted to test the power of the primal chaos sky-ceiling diagram. Gu Fei didn't think of this. From his point of view, those fellows from the Primogenitor realm were merely taking action to conquer the entire ancestral god realm. However, even if Gu Fei had guessed the intentions of the Supremes of the Primogenitor realm wrongly, it didn't matter. Since those fellows from the Primogenitor realm had designs on the ancestral god realm, they were Gu Fei's enemies. Gu Fei vaguely felt that the matter that he had been searching for could perhaps be resolved in the Primogenitor realm. Perhaps the Primogenitor realm would have the answer he wanted. At this moment, in the starry sky above the central continent, deep within the primal chaos, the battle of the Extreme Dao was still ongoing. The terrifying might of the Extreme Dao surged out from the primal chaos, causing countless living beings in the central continent to be extremely terrified. Kang Q had no choice but to use the supreme divine ability of the Chaos Golden Rock clan to force the Extreme Dao Supremes of the Primogenitor realm back. This made the Extreme Dao Supremes of the Primogenitor realm roar in anger. On the other side, the Extreme Dao Supremes of the Primogenitor realm who was fighting with the Sword Slave was a primal chaos exotic beast. This primal chaos exotic beast had the body of a human but the head of a snake. This was the primal chaos exotic snake of the Primogenitor realm. This exotic beast's movement speed was extremely fast and posed a great threat to the Sword Slave. Swish. The primal chaos exotic snake turned into a series of afterimages and appeared indistinctly in the void. No one could see where its true body was. Even the Sword Slave couldn't find the true body of this exotic beast. Buzz. The Sword Slave executed the 9 heaven-punishing swords. 9 immortal sword lights rampaged in the primal chaos. Wherever the sword lights passed, even the primal chaos was destroyed. The sword wave that spread out from the 9 immortal sword lights directly destroyed the afterimages left by the primal chaos exotic snake in the void. The Sword Slave didn't care if these afterimages were the true body of the primal chaos exotic snake. He destroyed all of them without letting a single one of them go. Swish. A sword light slashed one of the after images in the void. A miserable shriek resounded as a figure fell out of the void. This fellow was the primal chaos exotic snake. This fellow cultivated some kind of secret technique that could penetrate through the power of the world. The other two extreme Tao Supremes of the primogenitor realm had yet to cross over, but the primal chaos exotic snake had already entered the ancestral god realm. Fortunately, this fellow's cultivation wasn't the strongest among the extreme Tao Supremes of the primogenitor realm, so the sword slave could still suppress him. The exotic beast's left shoulder was drenched in blood. It was struck by the sword slave's sword light and there was a deep wound where the bone could be seen. However, the wound was healing rapidly and very quickly, the wound disappeared. At this moment, the primal chaos exotic snake directly spat a mouthful of black gas at the sword slave. The black gas instantly spread out and enveloped the sword slave. The sword servant hurriedly held his breath, but even then, he still felt his vision go black and the world spin, causing him to be extremely shocked. The black gas was poisonous, and the poison was so overbearing that even the sword slave almost fell victim to it. The primal chaos exotic snake race was not to be trifled with in the primogenitor realm. The most basic survival technique of this race was the black gas. After the black gas was spat out, the primal chaos exotic snake's expression became a little weary, as though its vitality was injured. 9 heaven punishing swords. The sword slave roared and immediately used his trump card. The sword light of the extreme Tao realm erupted from his body. The 9 sword lights dispersed the black gas around him and pierced through the body of the primal chaos exotic snake. The speed of the 9 sword lights was so fast that the primal chaos exotic snake was actually hit. Chapter 36-34. Genius in a second. Remember love go? This is the internet that provides you with exciting novels to read. The extreme grade supremes of the ancestral god realm worked together to seal the entire central continent with the primal chaos sky sealing diagram. The entire cultivation world of the ancestral god realm was in an uproar. Nothing like this had ever happened before. Even during the Great War of Gods and Demons, those fellows from the primal chaos demon realm had never conquered the central continent. Primal chaos, some of the most senior antiques stared at the huge primal chaos divine diagram above the central continent. They were shocked to the extreme. Did those people come again? The ancestral god realm was the legendary origin of all worlds. It was the origin of all major and minor worlds. The living beings of the ancestral god realm were considered to be superior beings, while the living beings outside of the ancestral god realm were all inferior beings. The living beings of the ancestral god realm could freely travel to other worlds, but it wasn't easy for the living beings of other worlds to enter the ancestral god realm. In the distant past, the living beings of the ancestral god realm had also come to the ancestral god realm. However, for some unknown reason, they left not long after. Since then, the living beings of the ancestral god realm had never returned. But now, the living beings of the ancestral god realm had appeared once again. Moreover, they were all extreme grade supremes. This made all the experts of the ancestral god realm dumbfounded. The living beings of the ancestral god realm were simply too powerful. They were so powerful that all the experts of the ancestral god realm felt despair. At this moment, in the depths of the starry sky above the central continent, the sword slave displayed his might and slashed the primal chaos exotic snake into a bloody mist. However, an existence of this level couldn't be killed so easily. That mass of chaotic blood mist instantly gathered together, and a powerful figure appeared in the chaotic chi. 2 blood-colored divine lights shot out from the chaos. The sword slave wasn't surprised. If this fellow could be killed so easily, then he was too weak. How could the extreme grade supremes of the ancestral god realm be so weak? Preposterous. The primal chaos exotic snake was enraged. Strands of primal chaos energy erupted from its body, causing the entire primal chaos to surge violently. A chilling killing intent spread from its body. Kill. The sword slave couldn't be bothered to waste his breath on the chaos variant serpent. He slashed out with his sword and an immortal sword light instantly shot out from his hand, piercing through the chaos variant serpent's body. The killing power of the 9 heaven punishing swords invaded the body of the chaos variant snake. In the next moment, the Chaos variant snake exploded. The old-timers of the Ancestor God realm were dumbfounded by this scene. This sword slave was actually this powerful. It was unbelievable. At this time, a figure watching the battle from afar had a grave expression. This person was Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan. He had fought with Saber Master Nai Jingyun in Nantian City. In the end, no one was able to kill the other. The two supreme masters of the Saber Dao fought until both sides were injured and retreated. However, the forces of the South Continent were completely annihilated by Kang Q. Only Nan Batian and Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan were killed by the 100,000 South Continent soldiers. At this time, Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan was wearing a black cloak, revealing only his face. He didn't dare to act rashly after witnessing the battle strength displayed by Kang Q and the others. Moreover, he had already sensed the aura of Saber Master Nai Jingyun. The Saber Master Nai Jingyun was also nearby. He also knew that Nai Jingyun had definitely sensed his presence. Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan had to be careful. If he was discovered by Nai Jingyun, a battle would be inevitable. If he alerted the experts on Kang Q's side, he wouldn't be able to leave this place alive. Kill. When the Chaos variant snake reformed its body again, the sword slave stabbed the Chaos variant snake's head with his sword again. Bang! With a muffled sound, the Chaos variant snake turned into a cloud of blood mist again. This made him extremely miserable. Just as the sword slave had gained the upper hand, the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit realm was in danger. The supreme martial artist he was fighting was so powerful that he couldn't help but be moved. Boom! With a loud rumble, the extreme supreme of the ancestral realm sent the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit clan flying tens of thousands of miles away. The extremely violent power of the extreme supreme of the primordial realm spread out. The starry sky outside the depths of the primordial chaos trembled violently as if it would collapse at any moment. Roar! The figure in the chaos roared angrily. He actually walked out of the chaos. The person who could send the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit realm flying with a single palm strike was a tall, skinny, and sallow youth. Love go little say neck. The youth looked like he had just recovered from a serious illness. He gave off a sickly feeling. I'm finally here. The seemingly weak youth had actually passed through the force field formed by the realm power of the ancestral god realm and entered the ancestral god realm. The youth looked around before he soared into the sky and rushed out of the chaos into the central continent of the ancestral god realm. However, at this moment, a figure rushed over and stopped him. This person was the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit realm that he had just sent flying. You. When the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit realm saw that the supreme martial artist from the ancestral god realm had actually broken through the realm power and entered the ancestral god realm, he was truly shocked. Currently, the central continent was sealed by the divine map of the ancestral god realm. The power of heavenly punishment was isolated outside the central continent. At this time, the power of an supreme martial artist would not be affected by the power of heavenly punishment. If this fellow was allowed to leave the chaos, the impact on the entire ancestral god realm would be unimaginable. You are no match for me. The youth looked at the first ancestor and said indifferently. He actually did not seem to care about the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit realm. Is that so? The first ancestor of the Earth Spirit became even more powerful. He fused with the Wheel of Chaos and temporarily returned to the extreme grade plane. However, there was a time limit to this. He could not maintain this state forever. Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. The sickly youth was very calm and cold. It was as if he was talking about something unimportant. Damn, do you really think that you are invincible in the world? You dare to act tough in front of me? The first ancestor of the Earth Spirit realm was unhappy. He had never been looked down upon like this before. This fellow was only a supreme martial artist of the ancestral god realm. What right did he have to look down on him? He was also a supreme martial artist, at least temporarily. The sickly youth shook his head impatiently. Then, he instantly disappeared in front of the first ancestor of the Earth Spirit realm. What? The first ancestor of the Earth Spirit realm's expression changed. Without thinking, he directly punched forward. The power of chaos was vast and mighty. The entire void in front of him directly collapsed. A figure appeared in the void. Boom. In the next moment, the two fists instantly collided. Two powerful forces exploded at the same time. A transparent circle of ripples spread from between them. The primal chaos aura in the surroundings was completely dispersed, forming a void. The void zone was a zone with nothing. There was no chaotic chi. There was nothing. There was also no light. It was absolute darkness. However, the land spirit's first primogenitor and the sickly youth's extreme divine light lit up the entire void. The first ancestor of the earth spirit realm groaned and was actually forced back. His arm felt numb. He looked down and saw that his finger was strangely bent. His finger bones had been broken. Damn it! The first ancestor of the earth spirit realm was both shocked and furious. However, the injury on his hand was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. His broken finger bones had already reconnected. His bones were growing quickly. In just a few breaths, the injury on his hand was completely healed. It was as if he had never been injured in the first place. You are too weak. The sickly youth shook his head helplessly. It was so lonely to be an expert. It was so hard to meet an expert that he could fight. It was so boring. How dare you act tough in front of me? Be careful of getting struck by lightning. The first ancestor of the earth spirit realm glared at the sickly youth. Sigh. Being undefeatable is the loneliest. The sickly youth shook his head and sighed. Hearing the sickly youth's words, the first ancestor of the earth spirit realm almost spat out blood. This guy was too pretentious. F***ck, did he really think he was undefeatable? It seemed like this guy was seriously ill. Undefeatable my ass. The first ancestor of the earth spirit realm roared angrily. He continued to attack. A huge divine will rushed out of his body. It emitted a terrifying aura that seemed like it could destroy the world. It rushed towards the sickly youth. However, the sickly youth directly punched the divine wheel of chaos that was about to be obliterated. His fist was glowing. Boom. The sickly youth's fist landed on the divine wheel of chaos. The first ancestor of the earth spirit realm was dumbfounded. His divine wheel of chaos was actually sent flying by his opponent's fist. A very shallow fist mark was left on the divine wheel of chaos. How is this possible? The first ancestor of the earth spirit realm was truly shocked. His opponent was actually so powerful. His invincible words were definitely not said casually. I want to see exactly what you are capable of. The first ancestor of the earth spirit realm rushed into the sky and instantly fused with the divine wheel of chaos. In the next moment, the divine wheel of chaos exploded with an even stronger wave of power. This kind of power had already surpassed the initial stage of the extreme path. It was much stronger than the average initial stage extreme path supreme martial artist. However, the sickly youth's cultivation was definitely not at the initial stage of the extreme path. He was at least at the intermediate stage or even the advanced stage. Of course, he was definitely not the strongest extreme path supreme martial artist. Otherwise, this sickly youth could have killed the first ancestor of the earth spirit realm in one move. Why would he waste so much time talking to the first ancestor of the earth spirit realm? Sigh. The sickly youth shook his head helplessly. He punched again. This time, he still sent the divine wheel of chaos flying. This shocked the first ancestor of the earth spirit who had fused with the divine wheel of chaos. Rumble. Just as the first ancestor of the earth spirit realm was in danger, a thunderous sound suddenly came from outside. The chaotic Fengtian diagram that enveloped the entire central continent actually shook violently. It was as if it could collapse at any time. Someone was attacking the chaotic Fengtian diagram from outside. They wanted to break it open and enter.